He's a father too. And he said, now I want you to write the age that your kids will be underneath all of those tours. And I started writing the ages out, and it starts to like hit me right in the gut. I'm like, oh my goodness, man. I've only ever had two goals, and one was to be in the SEAL teams, and one was to be good dad and good husband. And we were thinking it was going to be like a gentleman's course, is what we were told. It's you're learning tactics. It's their selection. We knew right before we landed that the muzzle clearance was going to happen, and it was going to be done on our watch. You'll go, you'll clear out all the bad guys, and then you'll train up the locals. You're to the point now where your moves matter in your career if you want to be a commanding officer of a SEAL team. Even though we're very personable, Mike's a pro, there's that line of leadership there that he's not going to cross.
We're not talking about this, Mike. Yeah. Pro and maturity level, non-existent. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He's a former Navy SEAL, 13 years, he's got 3 combat deployments, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Eastern Africa. He led 5 platoons in Iraq against the Islamic State forces. He was the OIC of training for the entire West Coast SEAL teams. Left active duty in 2019 and was the COO of a venture capital-backed construction tech startup, which that's going to be the bulk of the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know about construction tech, let me just get ready.
Going balls deep on that one. He's one of the founders of Primal Beef, a company focused on providing high-quality grass-fed beef with a strong emphasis on sustainability and health-conscious choices. He's also an instructor at Echelon Front, a leadership consulting firm founded by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, where he teaches principles of leadership derived from combat experience in the SEALs and applies them to businesses and organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Sean Glass.
Appreciate you having me, Mike.
Thanks for coming. Before we get into the lightning round, I would like to ask, because you work with Jocko, have you ever seen him lose his cool?
No.
Never?
Literally never.
Not one fucking time?
Nope.
Like raise his voice?
Nope.
Never?
Mm-mm.
Would you tell me if you did?
Oh, yeah for sure I would.
100%?
Yeah.
Like, have you seen him fuck up?
No. Dude, he is...
It's like a robot.
Calm, cool, and collected.
All the time, huh?
The thing that he preaches to us that really helps him out in that, and he'll be the first one to tell you this, is there's very few things that he genuinely cares enough about to die on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So everything else, he's open to outside influence. So when you're talking moral, ethical, legal, discipline-related things, there's no room for maneuver there with him. Everything in between, he just doesn't hold a very strong opinion about things. So why do we typically get frazzled? Because we have these sometimes deeply, sometimes not so deeply held convictions, and whenever they get challenged, we get stressed out, our ego gets involved, we start to get a little emotional, we react to it. And so he'll tell us, like, one of the things that really helps him, that he's learned over time to just maintain a cool, is there's just not that many things that he's so passionate about that he's just like, there's no wiggle room here.
Yeah.
So everything else is a conversation. And if it's a good idea, like when we started the beef business, I had this speech in my head for why he should do this with me.
He's probably just like, yeah, sure, sounds good.
I said, hey man, what do you think? I kicked off with, what do you think? This is my opening line leading into, my declaration of all the things of why he should be involved. Yeah. I said, what do you think about a Shenandoah Valley based beef business? And he goes, I'm in.
You're like,
I was like, but I've got the speech prepped.
That's fucking great. I love it.
Yeah.
What's the last full book that you read?
Last full book that I read.
And actually finished.
Well, I'm halfway through Jack Carr's Beirut bombing right now. Yeah. He sent me a copy a couple of weeks ago, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the last one that you actually finished?
Last full book that I read was a spy novel. Nothing, just fun. Just
total
just
fiction.
I needed something to block my mind out.
Yeah.
And just, in my mind, live out this spy fantasy that I think all guys, even ones with our background, still think that we're eventually going to get called to do one day.
Well, that's the thing. I think the pop culture element of the SEAL teams and the brochure recruiting wise paints this picture of like, Jason Bourne and James Bond having a love child, and
which is the truth, everyone.
Yeah, and you're this John Cena looking Adonis that fulfills that role, but it's rare that anything even close to that happens.
The last book, nonfiction book that I read, and it was a reread, was Legacy, which is about, it's a guy, I actually brought him out when I was running Trade at, his name's Kerr, brought him out he's a English author. He went out to study the New Zealand All Blacks, winningest sports team in history across all sports franchises. And he went out there to kind of try to figure out what was their secret sauce. Yeah. And then he compiled all that into the book Legacy. Oh, cool. And it's, one of the best books on leadership and culture I've ever read. My kids are big rugby fans, so like they've read it. There's so many good principles to pull out of there. Highly recommended.
Yeah, that's awesome. How are they not canceled yet with a name like that? Even though I don't know.
Yeah,
like it's not
because they're so tied to the national identity down there.
Yeah. What's something that you wish you were better at?
Something I wish I was better at. Husband and father. Yeah. I think I'm pretty good, but I've only ever had two life goals, and one was to be in the SEAL teams, and one was to be good dad and good husband. Or I should say a great dad and great husband. I think I'm good. Yeah. But there's definitely room to improve there.
Is there a kind of a single point of not failure, but where you feel like
yes, detachment. There's our shared background, everything that we do training wise, even though the main point of that training is not detachment training, it's a tactical skill set or a selection process that you're going through, but it's teaching you how to get good at detaching. So from a work perspective, there's nothing that phases me. Nothing that phases me from a work perspective. But I still struggle with that detachment at home. And the reason that I do is the more emotionally involved you are with something, the harder it is to stay detached. Yeah. And there's nothing that I care about on the planet more than my wife and my kids. So there are times when, I do like a little reflection at the end of the day after the kids go to bed. My wife and I have our time. And I always do a little quick reflection of like, hey, what are do I need to make anything right tomorrow with any of the kids? And if I have a reason, I was too harsh on someone, I lost my cool, spoke too harshly, it's always stems from, I just didn't take a second, detach, let myself calm down, and then have a productive conversation.
Do you mind if I ask how old your kids are?
My oldest, so I have 5. My oldest is 13, and then my youngest will be 5 at the end of this month. And there's somewhere between 17 and like 23 months in between all of them.
Yeah. Hey guys, I want to take a minute to tell you about the Mic Drop Patreon, where you can get the real mic drop experience the way it's meant to be seen. You get completely uncensored, unfiltered, and uncut episodes with nothing held back, just raw, real conversations directly from me to you. Without YouTube censorship, plus you'll see it days before anyone else, with early premieres and exclusive bonus content that you won't find anywhere else. You get behind-the-scenes access to the show, including pre- and post-show footage, with me and the guest both in studio and on location, depending on what the guest is into and what we have going on. On top of that, we've got tons of Patreon-only perks, mic drop swag, access to exclusive merch, and the chance to submit your questions to be asked at the end of every episode. You'll also get a sneak peek at our upcoming guests, so you'll know who's in the studio weeks before anyone else. We're constantly releasing new features and dropping new content based on what you want to see. For our top tier members, you get the same Mic Drop Challenge coin that all of my guests receive from the upcoming show, which will never ever be for sale. We've got quarterly merch that's sent out directly to you, a monthly Zoom call with me where we talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, and an active group chat where we all shoot the shit on a daily basis. All of that for just a few bucks a month to support the show. Right now, we're also offering a 10% discount off an annual subscription, which means that you get more than a free month. I want to say thank you to everyone who has already signed up. Your support means that we get to keep bringing you the content that you love. So if you haven't yet, hit the link in the description or go to patreon.com/micdrop and join the team. I'll see you guys in there. Thank you.
Since the Civil War, dogs have stood alongside our military, proving to be indispensable partners. Our military prioritized ensuring proper canine nutrition for optimal performance, recognizing its vital role in mission success. Team Dog embodies that standard, offering science-based, customizable meal plans tailored to your dog's unique needs. Developed by a former Navy SEAL and K9 trainer, Team Dog Food ensures the highest quality nutrition for our K9 companions. Improve your dog's well-being. Be your dog's hero with Team Dog.
Do you mind sharing an example of the last time that you can remember where you struggled with detaching, of something like what your kids actually did to cause that?
Absolutely. I'm going to pick on my oldest son. Sorry, son, because it's the last one that comes to mind. But it's not his failure; it's my failure. So he is the most squared away older son that we could imagine. Like, we leave him with the other 4 kids at the drop of a hat, because we know how responsible he is. But we were to that phase where I'm trying to teach him about taking responsibility. If you mess stuff up, it's not that big of a deal. It's not. It's the not wanting to take responsibility for those things that I really care about and that his mom really cares about. You're going to make mistakes, especially as a kid. You're going to make mistakes. You're figuring stuff out. As a parent, your job is to help minimize those mistakes, but they're still going to make mistakes. And sometimes you have to, I would say most of the time, you need to let them learn from their own mistakes. So he struggles a little bit with, and he's getting much better at it, with just saying, hey, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'll fix it. That's all that we want to hear. There's nothing that he could ever do that's not going to solve the problem. The last time that I failed to detach was because he didn't say that. He offered an excuse and I got upset. Now, he real quickly said, hey, Dad, I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that. It just came out of my mouth. Like, I was wrong. I'm like, okay, cool. But my big lesson there was, that's my issue. I'm sitting here talking to him about his failures, and what am I doing right in front of him? I'm failing as a father to remain calm and cool during that situation because I'm so emotionally attached to it, because it frustrates me so much.
Yeah. Man, I've been there a million times for sure. My kids are a little older, but I agree. It's one of the hardest things to do. And I will say, for me at least, when they were really young, it was the most difficult.
Yeah.
One, because I think they do the most stupid shit per capita when they're toddlers, because they just don't fucking know anything.
Yeah.
It's like everything is trial by fire. And 2, like, I had just gotten out of the Navy. I'd come from being a buds instructor, going from working Hell Week to bossing toddlers around.
How'd that work out for the toddlers?
Not great. Not great at all. I mean, I was absolutely harder on them than I should have been. Especially 2 girls, toddlers. We'd moved from California to Texas. They were 2 and 4 when I got out, and we moved here, and I'd started a business, so there was a ton of stress with that, and it's just like I found myself making those mistakes often of not taking a step back and calming down. Now I will say we the 3 of us have a great relationship now, and not that it's ever been horrible. It's just, like I said, I was for sure too hard on them. And as we've progressed over the years, I've learned a lot and been able to take a step back. I think some of it is age, and it's kind of a weird, almost irony or dichotomy, maybe, to use one of your boss's famous terms. It's like you kind of should have kids when you're a little younger, I think, because it is kind of a young man's game, or a young person's game, even with not getting sleep and and whatever. But the dichotomy there, or the duality, is that you're kind of better set up for it when you're a little older, in terms of your perspective and wisdom and knowledge and patience and things like that. But staying up all night wiping ass will kick your ass way harder, when you're in your 40s than in your 20s, So, maybe there's not a right answer there, but for me, it's been a learning process for sure. And I'm grateful and even proud of myself, I would say, for where I've gotten to with them, but it's been a journey for sure.
Awesome. I think that's one of the biggest blessings of kids, is if you're open to it, they will help you fix some of the things that you need fixing, because they are walking, talking, adorable little fault finders. Yeah. And if you've got a weakness, like, they'll point it out. Yeah. They'll shine a spotlight on it for you, and then it's up to you to make sure that you correct that before it becomes an issue for them. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. It reminds me, this isn't really a fault in terms of personality or whatever, but when I still had some hair, I remember my youngest daughter, she was like 5 at the time, I think, and
she was like sitting on the armchair of the couch that I was sitting on, and she was like trying to put braids or barrettes or whatever, rubber bands, just putting a bunch of dumb shit in my hair or whatever. And she was like, "You got your hair cut?" I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Why did they cut so much off the middle of the back?" And I was like, "Motherfucker," but stuff like that, like, "Why is your ass so big, Mom?" It's just like, they just say shit that you're just like, man, that's fucking brutal.
I was on a training trip, and we had 2 sons at the time. And, like any wife who's married to someone in the service, they're doing the majority of the child rearing while you're out gallivanting across the place. And she calls me up, and she's kind of really embarrassed. She's like, "We were just at the coffee shop, and there was this lady who was in front of us, and she was bigger, and she was definitely a big girl. And Ronan just looks at her and says, 'You have a big butt.'" And my wife obviously is just
terrified,
mortified.
Oh,
So she calls me up to tell me this, and I'm like, "Well, honey, did she?"
Yeah.
And Ray's like, "Oh yeah." And I said, "Well, I mean, I can laugh at this because I'm not there dealing with this, embarrassment.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, honey, where's his? He's only 2.5 feet tall. Like, that's what his level is. That level. That's what he's looking at. So he wasn't being mean. He wasn't being cruel. He was just observing. He was just observing.
Yeah, they're priceless that way. If time travel were possible, where and when would you go?
Founding of our country.
Yeah.
Founding of our country.
Do you think it would be less romantic as it's remembered?
I think everything is probably a little bit less romantic than it's remembered, but I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I think that we have to have some level of romanticism to aspire to, because a lot of life is not very romantic. I think that the ideals that everything was founded on remains as true today as it was back then. But I would just love to be in the presence of those guys that had the fortitude to make the stand that they did for the principles that they did. And what people forget is a lot of those guys were in their 20s.
I was just going to say that. It's amazing how young they all were.
Yeah.
Which is kind of depressing, when you see. I mean, and I'll put myself in that same category. Like when I was that age, I wasn't thinking about stuff like that. There's a really good book I just read recently called The First Principles that you'd probably find fascinating. That was kind of surprising that way too, in terms of how heavy the influence of both Greeks and Romans were on the founding fathers, and kind of how paralleled they are even today to the two-party system. Greeks being more on the liberal side, Romans being more on the conservative side, and the way architecture is structured, the way government and military is structured, and kind of the influences, but just how prominent and influential a lot of turn of the millennia philosophy, Greek and Roman philosophy, was to those guys. Like, it was stuff that they read all the time. And it's just, to me, when you kind of wrap your arms around the type of men they were, and the upbringings that they had, the struggles, the education, the influence, just like, man, I feel like a total turd, like reading what these guys did at their ages and just what they accomplished. It's just fascinating. But
the things, the values and the morals that they held to be bedrock.
Yeah.
Like, there's no negotiating there on those. And it all comes from that tradition that's been evolving since Greece and Rome, of the Western thought process tradition, the Western stance on morality. That stuff was integral.
Yeah.
And then, you read the writings, and man, they sound like they're all, put it this way. If you read a letter aloud from one of them at the age of 20, they would sound like the smartest people on the planet just for how they wrote.
Yeah.
Just for how they wrote. But it didn't happen by accident. The things that they were reading, compared to what I just said was the last thing I read, was a cheesy spy novel. There's those things. I think there's a part of us that you can't help but be moved by when you read some of those Western cultural traditions that were founded back there with Greece and Rome, and then have just been evolving ever since.
For sure. Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. Do you have a favorite quote?
A favorite quote? I don't think I do. I'm not really one. There's not a lot of quotes that like motivate me, I guess would be that. So I don't put a high value
Yeah.
on quotes. There's plenty things that I have read that have resonated with me, but I can't think of like a favorite quote off the top of my head.
Yeah. Oh, amen. Do you have an EDC in where you live? Do you carry?
Yes.
You mind sharing what you carry?
Yeah, I carry the SIG 365 macro.
Nice.
Yep. And I have gone through, to my wife's chagrin, probably like 4 different models of the 365.
Oh, really?
Whenever they keep evolving it, I'm like, it's better, I'm getting this one.
Yeah.
It's better, I'm getting this one.
Yeah.
But it depends. It varies. EDCs are tools.
Yeah.
So if it's just every day rocking around and I'm not going to an event where I'm really too concerned about different things, that's what I carry.
Yeah.
At Mass on Sundays, I'm carrying something that's a little bit bigger,
Sawed off
that I shoot
shotgun.
a little bit better.
In the trench
Underneath
coat.
the 3-piece suit, in the guitar case that I bring it.
Slung on D5.
I carry something a little bit bigger, a little more stable that absorbs recoil a little bit better than the 365 does.
You could shoot a little longer if you had to.
Yeah.
I mean, that case here in Texas, that dude that dropped that guy, that was a long shot for a pistol.
He hit him in the head too.
And fucking drilled him. Yeah, I mean, that's an impressive shot.
My take on EDC in situations like that is I think it's very less likely that I need to use my EDC because I'm having an altercation with someone. Yeah. And I think it's more likely that I would have to use it, hopefully it never happens, to intervene in something that's already happening. Yeah. So I default in situations like that to accuracy and controllability over comfort.
Yeah. Yep. Same here. Also a big fan of the 365. That's what I carry most of the time, which is fairly recent. I used to carry the 43X pretty exclusively, but I did a range day with Clint Emerson a little while back, and just shooting them back to back. I was like, man, even though the 365 is a little bigger and heavier, it just shoots way better for a longer placement shot.
And the round count in that thing is insane.
Yeah, 15, no problem. What morning routine wise, what time do you get up, and what do the first 3 hours look like?
I'm usually up around 5:30. Don't set an alarm. That's just kind of my natural clock. My kids, my youngest son, so he's not my youngest, he's my youngest son. I have 3 boys, 2 girls, 3 boys in a row, then the 2 girls. My youngest son is usually down at around 6. So I have about 30 minutes of quality time where I'm firing up the espresso machine, getting a cup of espresso, and then it's usually some reflection, quiet time, some prayer, and then the madness starts around 6 o'clock. Yeah. And the madness is not really madness. Like they come down, I get to love on them for a little bit. It's early enough to where you don't have to worry about like rushing out the door for school yet. Yeah. They typically get ready real quick, so then we have time to play. My kids love games, so we're typically playing a board game before we go out the door.
Really?
And then
that's interesting. I mean, it's cool. It's rare, Usually it's like the Sunday afternoon family time or something. But is there a favorite game?
They like a game called Munchkin. So Munchkin is our brother-in-law introduced it to us, and it's awesome. It's basically a game where you have to build alliances, and then you just stab each other in the back at the very end. In order to win, you have to just stab each other in the back. So awesome. They think it's hilarious, and they pulled something the other day where all 3 of them finally realized, because I win like every time, but all 3 of them finally realized if they combine their powers and stop fighting with each other and just turn their guns on me, like I lose.
Yeah, America could take a page out of that book.
It definitely could. I'm hoping that they don't realize that in life for a little while, but in the board game, they've now figured it out.
You guys will be playing zone defense.
That's right.
Yeah. That's priceless, man. Do you train at all first thing in the morning or eat? Or
no. So I do a better job now of eating breakfast. I'm usually not hungry when I wake up, and the coffee for me is kind of what starts my day. But we've got a bunch of chickens on the farm, so now I'll have eggs and either some ham or bacon or some beef, some ground beef. And then I typically train, depending upon what my schedule is. I like to train in the afternoon because I have way more ability to pour stuff into it. Yeah. But a lot of times it's kids get dropped off and then I just go to the gym right afterwards.
Yeah, that makes sense. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from about an hour and 15 minutes down the road in Corsicana.
No shit.
Yeah, so not from Corsicana. The town that I was raised in is called Blooming Grove, and we weren't really even in Blooming Grove. It's just, how Texas works. Like, you got a lot of small areas that don't really have anything around them, so like, Blooming Grove is the closest. Yeah. So Blooming Grove, but all of our school, sports, church, all that stuff was in Corsicana.
Yeah, that's awesome. The whole time, like all from growing up?
Growing up all the way until college, and then over to A&M. I went to the junior college there, Navarro, in Corsicana for 2 years, and then over to A&M, and then Navy after that.
Did you play sports growing up?
Soccer.
Yeah,
a little bit of basketball. I went to a small Christian school in Corsicana. You didn't really have enough people to field that many teams.
Yeah.
So basketball is easy. You need, 5 people on the court, maybe 10 total for a team. And then soccer, in order to play soccer, like everybody from middle school to high school had to be on the same team. So when I was in 9th grade or 10th grade, we transferred over to the public school there, Corsicana High School. And by that time, I wish I would have played football or track or tried something else, but I had grown up playing soccer so much at that point in time that just was like naturally my sport. So I stuck with that.
Siblings?
One older sister, one younger sister.
Okay.
Yeah, my younger sister has been one of our strength coaches for the West Coast teams now for, I think, 8 or 9 years.
No way.
Yeah,
that's
she's
awesome.
phenomenal. If I would have listened to her about 10 years ago, I would be a lot stronger and probably a lot healthier right now.
So here's the question. Of course, it's a total adolescent question, but having an older sister in high school, did that help you out?
No.
Like dating wise, didn't?
No, not really at all. Yeah, she was basically in college by the time that I transferred over to that school. So
was it a culture shock going from small private Christian to?
No, not really, because the town's so small that like you kind of know most people anyway.
I got you.
Yeah.
Was there a light switch moment for you in terms of deciding you wanted to join the Navy?
Yes. Yeah, it was a book. So I still, to this day, like reading is something that I care very much about. But as a kid, fortunate enough to grow up in a time as you did where you didn't have internet, phones, any of that stuff. So it was just read. And we'd go to the Corsicana Public Library to pick up a bunch of books. And I was in the military section one day, I was about 13 years old, and I pulled this book out, and it just had this amazing cover, just a guy with a bandana on, tiger stripe face paint, tiger stripe camis with a stoner. I was like, I'm checking this book out.
Was it Point Man?
It might have been. This is what the crazy thing is. If you asked me, I would say it was the Men with Green Faces. I would have said 100% it was the Men with Green Faces, but I went back. That book wasn't published until after that period, so it couldn't have been that book. I must have read that later. It might have been Point Men, but
James Patches Watson wrote that, I think.
It was just a compilation of stories about team guys in Vietnam, and it blew my mind. It blew my mind. And for the first time, 13 is pretty young. For the first time in my life, it was like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
There's no question, like, that's what I want to do.
Do you know Ben Millington that wrote?
No, great book.
Yeah.
Great book.
He's been on Jocko's show several times, I think. But he was just on the show 2 days ago.
No way.
Did I tell you, man, like I would say embarrassed at what I didn't know about our community talking to that guy. I was just like, dude, holy shit. I mean, from where Hell Week came from to, just everything. I was just like, dude, this guy is a fucking walking encyclopedia on the SEAL teams. Like, holy shit.
And when we say, when you're told this, and then when you tell younger guys this in the community, you're standing on the shoulders of giants that built our reputation.
Yeah.
You read a book like that, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's humbling.
Yeah.
Super humbling.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So reading that book, like, definitively, it's like, this is what I'm going to do. Was that you're 13?
13, yeah.
Was the goal always to be an officer, or did you think?
I didn't really know. I was kind of expanding and evolving as time went on, and I would have at the time probably liked to enlist at 18. My parents said, hey, here's the deal. You don't care if you enlist, don't care if you want to be an officer, but go to college first. Their thought process was, hey, if this is a very, love my parents, but like, I'm never telling my kids go to college first.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I would probably hope my kids maybe are watching or not watching, but I've already told them some of these things. Like, I don't care if you go to college. Matter of fact, I don't want you to go to college unless you have to have that piece of paper for something. If you want to be an engineer or a doctor, you have to have that piece of paper.
Yeah.
Otherwise, save your money, go somewhere else, start a job, start a company, work, get some experience. But their thought process was, you have to go to college. Like, I think a lot of our parents' mindset was college is what is important in life after, to set you up for success. So they just said, hey, you got to go to college at some point in time in your life. If you go enlist, do 6, 8, 10 years, and then get out and you have to go to college now and you're 28 with all that experience. Yeah. You're not going to relate to anybody. It's going to be a different experience. I think in their mind, I don't know this for sure, but maybe it was a ploy of like, get him to college, things will change. Yeah. This phase will blow over. He'll want to do something else. But it didn't. So I decided, hey, if I'm going to go to college, I might as well do the officer route, put my package in when I was at A&M, got picked up, and then shortly thereafter was in the Navy.
So I'm assuming that just the standard OCS route, right?
Standard OCS route.
To your point, I think college back then was a much better value. It was cheaper, and I think you got way more out of it.
Yeah,
I was useful.
I went to A&M, and I chose an easy degree because I just wanted to be out of college. I knew what I was going to do. So the piece of paper what was on the piece of paper didn't really matter too much in my mind at the time. Yeah. It was just, I need the piece of paper to go to OCS. Yeah. So I took an easier career path, if you will, in college. Well, I thought it was easier. I took speech communication. What ended up happening was every single class had like a 30-page research paper attached to it. So it actually wasn't super easy. Yeah. But I just chose that because it got me into the Navy pretty quickly. But A&M's a state school. It wasn't that expensive. I was working as I was going through. I graduated after 3 years there with less than $10,000 in debt. And then once I was in the military, that thing was paid off in like 2 months after I started getting an actual paycheck. Yeah,
that's amazing. Man, that's super cool. At which now, I mean, I'm sure it's 5 or 10 times more expensive now.
Yeah, even A&M is 5 or 10 times more expensive.
Yeah, it's nuts. In terms of your, from the time of reading the book at 13 and having this kind of built up expectation in your mind of what to expect, what it's going to be like, what was expectation versus reality of once you actually joined and were in the show at Buds?
It was everything and more than I was hoping it would be.
What class were you in?
I was 272 going through Buds, and then the officers get the leadership role. You have to go through the junior officer training course. So you graduate Buds, you roll, so your class that you've got to know for the last 7 months, all the guys that you love, continue on in training. You go to the junior officer training course for, I think it's 6 weeks, and then you pick up with the next class. So Buds 272, SQT 273.
I gotcha. That's kind of a shit deal.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
I get it, but
I'm glad they do it because the JOTC course, which Leif, who's now one of the founders of Echelon Front, one of my bosses and friend, he was running that course, and it is a great course. It gives you a lot of the tools that you need to be a value added during your first platoon. So it's a good course, but it does stink that you're, leaving your guys. But it also gives you an opportunity to get to know a whole nother crew of guys that are coming through that, you don't know at all. So there was a lot of nervousness for me going into Buds because basically my whole life was looking forward to that. And then I'm there and there's always these questions of, well, how are you going to perform? How are you going to stack up? Look at these other guys, man, they're studs. And then once the process of Bud starts, you're so involved in that all those thoughts go away. But it was just amazing. Are you having a good time going through it? Not most of the time, but looking back at it,
it was awesome.
It's great. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, there's times where I'll reflect almost like with a depressive nostalgia about that time in my life. Because I joined right at 18. I had to wait until I turned 18 over the summer after graduation to go to boot camp. And so, I was 18 in Buds and 19 at SEAL Team 3. But just thinking of I lived in Coronado, I rode my bike to the command, single, no kids, fucking, not a care in the world, 19, 20 years old. It's just man, not that I'd want to go back then. I love where I'm at now, but man, it's just what a fucking time in your life, it's an amazing experience.
Single-minded focus.
Yeah.
Single-minded focus.
Yeah. Honestly, it was easy. The only thing you have to worry about is going through training. Yep. It's nobody else to worry about, nobody else to answer to.
Show up, perform, be a good teammate.
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm assuming you went straight through a 272?
Yeah. Yep. Straight through a 272, JOTC, and then 273 for SQT.
Any, super memorable experiences throughout the entire training pipeline that stick out?
I would not have said it was a very exciting thing at the time, but there was a gap between, there was very few officers that were graduating the 273 or 271? I think it was 271. So they were going to combine our JOTC courses. But what that meant was we had time to kill before JOTC. So we graduate buds, there's time to kill, like 2 months to kill before we're supposed to start JOTC up. And at the time there was a Green Beret major who was augmenting the junior officer training course, helping Leif out. And he said, well, hey, the small unit tactics portion of the Green Beret selection pipeline is going on. Why don't we send them to that, and they'll get some experience, they'll learn some tactics, they'll learn some leadership stuff, they'll come back and basically it wasn't Leif at this time. Leif had turned over with another guy named Mike Sorelli. And so Mike Sorelli was like, that sounds like a great idea. So we went through that, and we were thinking it was going to be like a gentleman's course is what we were told. You know, you're learning tactics. It's their selection. So you're learning stuff, but like it's still the hammer. So in our minds, we had just graduated buds. I'm like, okay, well that phase of our life is over. Now it's time to perform in SQT, because SQT is still challenging, but you're not getting the physical aspect of things as much. There's still PTs and everything, but it's skill based. It's, can you do the skill? Can you not do the skill? So we're kind of like out of that mindset of just the grind and getting beat down. And then we go to the Green Beret pipeline and just get beat down again for another couple of weeks. But we did learn a lot, and it did set us up for success going through SQT, because now we knew patrolling, we knew tactics, we knew all these different terms that the Navy typically is not very good at teaching us. Like, we had a familiarity with all that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Outside of that, it was just the day-to-day of just being with your buddies.
Yeah.
The demented sense of humor that gets you through.
Oh, I know it. Yeah, to me, that's a significant part of it that I think is necessary, really, is almost that dark humor and the ability to laugh at yourself and each other in the darkest of times is a really significant augment, I think, to making it. Where did you initially go after you graduated team-wise?
Team 7.
Team 7. Mm-hmm. Which is where that was the story of pulling TCAV out of the drink. That's on Patreon if you want to check that out. A good story about one of our former guests, Taylor Kavanaugh, where he fell in the water and Sean had to save his life. Basically, we'll just
You're welcome, Taylor.
That's good shit. What was your first experience like being at a SEAL team? And, were you a 3rd O or an AOIC?
At that time, they called us AOICs. So we had, the 3 officers in a platoon. You have your platoon commander, and then at that point in time, we were called actually assistant platoon commanders, which is the same thing as AOIC. Yeah. So we had 2 of those. Myself, another guy named Rob, who's about to retire. Awesome guy. He prior enlisted, did a couple platoons at Team 3, then went to OCS. Just good at everything he does.
Yeah.
And we call him Handsome Rob, because he's just ridiculously good looking as well. So
I probably know him if he was
you probably
3.
do.
Yeah.
He's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
But one of those guys that it would be easy to hate because he's so good at everything, except for he's just the nicest guy as well.
Yeah.
So that was the officer corps. And then my platoon chief was one of my first phase instructors, who at the time, walking in and seeing him there brings, the flashbacks. But the best leader I've ever worked for in the SEAL teams.
Can you say who that is?
Dave Hansen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he just retired last year.
Yeah, great dude.
Working at the C4 Foundation now, one of our partners over at the Beef Company.
Yeah, that's awesome. That platoon, where did you guys go?
So it was all over the map at first. So we were supposed to go to the crisis response element, which is basically break glass in case of war element in the Middle East that was stood up after the Benghazi scenario. The powers that be in CENTCOM said, hey, we've got to have a force there to react to things, even though there was already a force there that could have reacted to things if they had made the call. But anyway, they stood that up. But it's very maritime focused, because everything that you were basically training for was likely going to take place on water. So we were supposed to go there, and then it got shifted, and then we were supposed to go to Iraq. And then it got shifted again, and we were supposed to go back to the Cree. And then about a month before we deployed, found out we were going to Afghanistan, and we were going to be there for 11 months. So we ended up going to Afghanistan after all the back and forth, which was obviously the place where everybody wanted to be.
Yeah. When you actually got the, hey, this is where you're going orders and actually went there, one thing I like to ask all guests that go to any type of combat environment, and especially as an officer, did you have a good grasp of why you were going there and kind of what the objectives were to consider it a successful deployment?
No, not at first. But luckily, I've benefited from just such good leadership during my time in the community, which I know is not everybody's experience, but I was very, very blessed to have great leadership, starting at that point in time with my troop commander, Jack Carr. So when he found out that we were going to Afghanistan, which is a place that he had been to, and obviously Jack has been a longtime student of war, he understood that conflict all the way back to the Soviet conflict in there, all of those things, the buildup, our arming of the Taliban, and everything that's happening now. So he really kind of laid out an explanation and a roadmap, and then he leveraged outside experts to come in and help us get prepared as well. One of who literally wrote the book on counterinsurgency, Kilcullen, he brought him in to talk to us because the mission that we were going to do was a newer mission in Afghanistan and a very new mission for the SEAL teams, which is called Village Stability Operations. And the theory behind VSO, Village Stability Operations, was Afghanistan has never been a centralized everything happens at the tribal level. So they're trying to build out this centralized form of government that can support the country, which was probably destined to fail in the first place, but that was what they wanted to do. So the thought process was, we'll build all these village stability outposts. You'll go, you'll clear out all the bad guys, and then you'll train up the locals to be able to be their own security police force so that when it's our time to leave, they can maintain security. At the same time you're doing that, the village stability operation model was the local governance tie-in as well with all these different tribal police forces. So each tribal police force is tied into a provincial police force. The provincial police force is tied into the central government police force. And that was kind of their model for how to pacify and control Afghanistan. So we were going to do that. No idea what we were getting into. That's very much a Special Forces Green Beret mission set, not really a SEAL mission set. So all credit to our leadership, starting with Jack and then our platoon commander, Mike, and Dave, with just giving us the knowledge that we needed to set us up for success.
Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't realize that you did a platoon under Jack. That's pretty cool.
The man.
Yeah. I think he'd be a good higher up politician, honestly.
Yes.
I really do. Because he has the ability to polish up very well, whereas I think a lot of us don't. At least I don't.
He definitely does, but he holds the line.
Yeah.
And that's what as a young guy, balance. That's what you appreciate. Like I watched him hold the line with senior officers several times. Yeah. And when they tried to push specifically in training, he would just very calmly dismantle them with facts. Yeah. And you're like, well, you can't really argue with that.
Yeah. And to me, that's how a true good and capable politician needs to be. You need to be unflappable, but you need to be smart enough to be able to pick people apart and get what you want to be accomplished. In that deployment, did the early onset of trying to clear out the bad guys, was there a lot of resistance in some of those areas?
A lot of resistance. Yeah. So we were fortunate enough to get put into a place that had never had really any American presence. So there was a lot of, the entire territory was basically underneath the control of the insurgents. I don't even know at that point in time in 2011 and 12 if you would even call them the Taliban. Like, I'm sure they were tied into it, but they weren't like hardcore Taliban fighters. It was more of the overall insurgency up where we were up north. So controlled by the Taliban for sure, but it's not like their main force was up there. It was all of their proxy forces that they had armed, and they were all over the place. So our first 11 months, our first couple of months was just patrolling and clearing people out of there and trying to at the same time build up the police force.
Yeah. In terms of those operations of kind of the initial clearing, could you share any stories about some of the operations that kind of stand out as being memorable in those ways?
Yeah. The first, again, remember, it is my new guy tour. So the first couple of real firefights obviously are stuck in your head. What I remember thinking about them is, and this is a hats off to our training that we go through. And every situation is not the same in combat. Obviously, some things unfold very, very quickly, as you find out later out in your career. But this one particular, my first firefight, I remember distinctly thinking things are happening a lot slower than we were trained for. In training, they're just, especially when Jocko was running things, it was like all of a sudden it's a disaster on all fronts, and you have to figure it out. Yeah. Where on this one, you had time, you were looking, you were figuring things out. There's a little bit of distance, so very surreal because the moves that our chief made were so aggressive that it was over very quickly because he was just so on the ball with his calls. Yeah. And then the first one that was really a kind of an eye-opening moment was they attacked our base about 2.5 weeks after we embedded, which we knew was going to happen, but not at the scale that it actually happened.
Oh, wow.
So middle of the day, my platoon commander is doing a key leader engagement. KLE is what we call them. But basically a key leader engagement means you're meeting with important person in that province, in that tribe. You're trying to build relationships, let him know why you're there. He's laying the groundwork for the rest of our deployment, basically. And the attack just so happened to go down when he wasn't there. Oh, wow. So we're in our base, and all of a sudden rounds start coming in, mortars start coming in, rockets start coming in. And our base was in a village, and there was 2 pieces of terrain on either side, and we had observation post on top of there to provide standoff weapon support and protect the base. And then there's a wadi that's about 300 to 400 meters long, and then a set of big hills on the backside of that wadi. So they were on the backside and the tops of those hills, and they were just raining in things into our base. And then I'm sure their intent was to soften the target up and then to push through. So all these rounds start coming in, and my chief just makes the call without 1 second of hesitation, load up the vehicles, we're going to get them. And I'm sitting here thinking,
What?
Huh? Like, how did you, well, we've got these posts, and, how did you come to that decision? So I'm not asking him these things, obviously, but in my mind, I'm like, dude, you came up with that decision like that. Obviously, looking back at it, it's very clear he had thought this whole thing out well in advance, like a good chief. Like, he knew we were going to get tested, and he already knew where it was going to come from, tactically based on the terrain, where their best position was. So he'd already worked out his call well ahead of time. So as soon as we started getting rounds, it was like, hey, load up, let's go. So I'm all fired up. I'm like, let's go do this thing. Unfortunately for me, he pulls me aside and he's like, hey, man, Mike's not here. You're the OIC for right now. You have to stay here, control our supporting fires from here, and you have to make sure that you can make comms with higher headquarters, because the second we go into the wadi, we're probably not going to be able to make comms, and like somebody has to control the air piece and let higher headquarters know what's going on in case we need to get medevacs and stuff in here.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
which is like when, as a parent, you're like, I need you to be daddy's big helper.
Yeah.
Like,
hold the flashlight, son. Yeah. So I stayed back, coordinated the counteroffensive from the OPs, which really those guys, you guys don't need any help with that stuff. Like, our guys know what to do. Yeah. But I'm talking to air, talking to higher headquarters. He pushes through with the rest of the platoon through the wadi, and the Taliban was definitely not expecting this to happen. They popped up on the high ground in a flanking position and just completely pushed them off the high ground very, very quickly. Wow. And on the backside of those hills, there was a vineyard. And you've seen the vineyards in Afghanistan. There are rows and rows of trenches, basically. It's not like our vineyards. Our vineyards, ground level, you put the stakes in, the vines grow up. There they build trenches and like earthworks, basically, and then the vines are on top of it. So they basically had entrenched positions back there now that they were calling in, or they were shooting at us, but we had the high ground on them. So at that time, we had a B-1 check-in, Bone 2-1 check-in, B-1 bomber to provide support. And we worked fires. Our JTAC worked a great strike on top of them, and they dropped 2 2,000 pounders and 5 500 pounders in one pass. Damn. And the firefight was over just like that.
What are the odds that you got that on video? Any?
We do have it on video. Yeah.
Is that something that is not shareable?
I don't know. I think it is shareable. I think it's in our platoon video.
I would love to throw that in the YouTube.
Let me see what we got. Let me see if I can find it. And then we also went through, and after we did our BDA, our battle damage assessment, cleared through to make sure the firefight was over with, there was tungsten steel fragments everywhere from that ordnance. And one of our guys collected a bunch, and unbeknownst to us, after we got back from Afghanistan, he took it to a forge in San Diego, and he had him smelt it down, and he made tungsten steel tridents for all of us out of those munitions.
How cool is that?
Awesome.
Do you have a picture of that?
I can send it over to you. Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. It's hanging on my wall in my office.
Cool. That's awesome.
So that was the first big kind of eye-opening moment.
Yeah. And
then there was a big nighttime clearance operation after that was supported by the Afghan Commando Unit, where there was 123, 125 EKIA on their side, not the Afghanis, the insurgent side. And that was kind of the more or less the turning point.
Yeah.
Now there's still little skirmishes here and there, but you take out 125 followed by or preceded by the 25 to 35 that we took out the week before that with the strike. And man, I think they realized that territory wasn't worth really hanging on too much anymore. Wow. So throughout the deployment, still lots of intermixed action, but never really on that scale anymore.
So the second one, the big clearing operation, can you kind of soup to nuts walk through that one?
So there's our village was called Oimast, where we were stationed, where we were living. And then there was the bad guy village about 20 kilometers up through the wadi, through the valley, a town called Kwajalein, or K2 is what we called it. That was their headquarters. There's a series of villages, very small villages, Afghani villages in between that. And one of them, we knew we needed to basically clear out and control because it was kind of the neutral territory that they could use to stage and maneuver on us. So big nighttime clearance operation. Afghani commandos go in. Our guys have positions everywhere. Our guys are supporting the clearance, taking part in the clearance. And the vast majority of the EKIA came from overhead air support. So, American firepower in the air is an amazing thing to behold. And we had AC-130s, sections of Apaches just all night long, just hammering them. And there's one road. There's really only one road for them to get from Kwajalein, bad guy land, to the village that we were in. And they just kept sending fighters down this road. So we just had positions set up to hammer them with small arms fire and then let the overhead assets take care of them. It's
almost like a Gates of Fire experience, like funneling.
It was mind-blowing to me that they kept using the exact same tactic over. But I think what happened is they send people, we killed them. No one's responding. They send more people, we kill them, and they just kept doing that game all night long.
Wow. Man, that's an overwhelming use of just firepower and ass whooping. I mean, did you guys go do the battle damage assessment for that afterwards?
Our guys did. It was mainly the Afghani commandos that were doing the battle damage assessment for that because they've got about 100 people rolling through there with them. They had their SF handlers, their Green Beret handlers for that particular unit. Yeah. So our guys were the supporting fires positions, the sniper overwatches, the heavy weapons, and then maintaining eyes on the egress and ingress routes.
That makes sense. Having spent time in Afghanistan and doing that as a mission, as you reflect back and you look at that 20-year block-ish of time that our country spent there, and then especially seeing the drawdown and the withdrawal go the way that it did, what are your thoughts on all of it?
Several, and not good. I think in hindsight, the right call would have been what we did at the very beginning, which is just lay waste and then say, don't provide a safe haven for them again. And if you do, them being the Taliban, because I'm sure most of the listeners know the backstory, but Al-Qaeda, not the Taliban. Al-Qaeda was using Afghanistan as a staging base for their headquarters, for their operations. A lot of the 9/11 attacks, the original Twin Tower attacks, all of that was kind of planned and facilitated there and then carried out. So, we come in early in the 2000s, a lot of overhead air pressure, a lot of working with locals on the ground, the horse soldiers, the Green Berets, the early SEAL Team 6 operations in there, and really, Anaconda, that whole mission set, and really just did a lot of damage to Al-Qaeda. And I think a better strategy would have just been to say, lay waste and then pull out and say, don't provide them safe haven again. And if you do, this same thing is going to keep happening over and over and over again. But we decided to go in there and try to hit our hand in nation building in a civilization that has never really been a nation. It's been a series of very successful tribes but never really been a nation. And then you look at all of the resources and all the lives that we poured into there, the devastation on both sides. And then you look at both sides not being the bad guys, but there's always a civilian population that's going to be affected by war as well.
And especially the people that worked with us that were from there.
Absolutely.
And getting hung out to dry.
And you just think about, part of Kilcullen's book, the guy that Jack brought in to walk us through kind of the insurgency, counterinsurgency mission set. Part of it was, you're naturally making insurgents if you're not doing things right. I mean, imagine a force coming into America and telling us, hey, we're here to help. But then, they're clearing through villages. Some bad things happen. Some mistakes are made. What are young, aggressive males going to do? We're going to take up arms, and all of a sudden we're now part of the problem. Yeah. So we created a lot of issues as well that then we had to later try and solve. And then when you look at just the unmitigated disaster that was the pullout, we had that country with very little resources, still pretty contained and pretty controlled. If you listen to the last commanding general who was running the strike cell up there, pretty convincing case that with limited resources and surgical strikes, he was keeping the Taliban in their position and allowing things to flourish.
Troops, right?
That's it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's it. And then we, make the decision to withdraw, and not just the decision, but the method in which it was chosen just led to disastrous results, not just in that country, but on the world stage as well. And, there's so many different, the visions of how that thing unfolded and the chaos and the panic that it left in the civilians' minds over there, the images of people like scrambling to hang on to the wheels of planes as they're taking off because they know what's going to happen. People trying to flood through the gates to get onto the base to get out of there because they all know what's going to happen the second that the Taliban regained control. And it's no surprise. There's no surprise. Like, everybody knew exactly what was going to happen. Everybody knew exactly what was going to happen. And yet we did it. And the method that we did it, those 13 Americans that we lost, you could not have put them in a more compromised security position if you tried. Yeah. If you tried. You put them outside of a gate, surrounded by thousands of Afghanis, most of which just wanted to get out of there, provide the outer security corridor, outer security. We allowed the Taliban to control the outer security, which in and of itself is mind-blowing that we would do that. And then, the ISIS-K comes in there and they're able to detonate that bomb. And the really disturbing thing to me is, one of the most disturbing things is we knew that gate was going to get hit. We absolutely knew. And I can, show you receipts for how we knew. We had 3 Terps that really helped us out when we were in Afghanistan. There was 2 brothers and a cousin. And one of the brothers, we were able to get over on a special immigrant visa years and years ago. He lives in Virginia. And we were able to get his cousin about 2 years before the pullout over. And then the last brother, we were in the process of his special immigrant visa getting approved. The only thing left he had to do was go to the embassy in Kabul, and the American embassy, and get his stamp, and then him, his newborn son, and his wife could come over. Well, that appointment was scheduled for after the withdrawal. So we knew he wasn't going to get out. So I'm trying to work a plan from stateside for how to get him and his family out of there, because again, like anybody with a brain knew exactly what was going to happen the second that we withdraw our forces from there. We knew the Taliban had all of their information because we keep all of that stuff in these different biometric libraries that we have to protect ourselves, to make sure that the people that we're working with are the good guys. And they're not going to, minimize the risk of these green on blue attacks from nefarious individuals who are just, pretending to be our friends, basically. So we have these massive databases with all of their names, all of their information, all of their biometric information in there. And when we pulled out the way we did, guess who got control of all of those things? The Taliban did. So we knew that they were just going to be systematically decimated for supporting us. So I'm trying to work a plan from stateside to get him out, and I'm leveraging every single resource at my disposal to get him and his wife and kids out. So I'm communicating with him on a encrypted app. And he had made his way down to the main city where our terminal was, and he was trying to get into the gate. And I was calling friends of mine that I thought might be on the ground from different units, to include different 3-letter agencies. I had a pretty good plan worked out. I had a buddy, SEAL, one of my best friends, whose brother was a C-130 pilot in the Marines. And I hit his brother up and I said, hey man, are you flying missions into Afghanistan? And he said he was. And I told him what was going on. And I said, I've got a terp that I have to get out. And I said, if I can get him on base, will you fly him out? And he said, yes. Yeah, he will. Which, I mean, by the way, that's like highly illegal, like highly illegal. But this guy's willing to hang it out for me. And there was a lot of Americans that were willing to do that exact same thing for our Afghani counterparts because of the sense of loyalty that I think that we kind of innately have with those people that put their lives on the line for us. So he said he would even do one better. He would go to the gate and get him on base and get him to the plane. Oh, wow. So he goes to the gate to try to get him on, and I'm simultaneously communicating with some contacts that are in some different government agencies. And I'm trying to get him and his family onto the gate. And he says, okay, well, cool, man, what gate are they at? And I tell him, and this is the day before the attacks. And he goes, tell him to leave that gate immediately and find another gate to come to, because there's very credible reporting that we're going to get hit there. We knew it was going to happen. And we still, the next day, left those service members in that position.
So whose fault is that? I mean, obviously, Washington, D.C. isn't dictating that level of tactical operational control. So who fucked that up?
I don't have a solid answer, but what we know we know that agencies don't play well together. We know they don't share information very well at times. And the only thing that I can think is that there was so many different things going wrong and so many different fires that they were trying to put out that they're not communicating with each other. But ultimately, what I would say is whoever the hell was in charge on the ground is the person that's responsible for that. Now, ultimate responsibility goes to the man at the top.
Yeah.
But the guy on the ground who was in charge of that operation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because to me, even with the directive of, hey, you're going to pull out and it's going to be by this day. Okay. That's your, top shelf order, but everything, the logistics, the tactics on the ground are whoever the ground force commander is, like anybody who's spent any time in the military would be able to look at that scenario and say, these people can't be outside the gate. We've got to figure out a better system and not just be like, well, fuck it, we'll just do it this way. And
one would hope, right?
Yeah,
one would hope. And then, those leaders at the top, the military leadership, from a leadership perspective, shame on all you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not willing, if you disagree with things so vehemently, which a lot of them say they did, why are you not willing to put your rank on the table and say, I'm not going to be a part of this?
Yeah, man, it's good to hear you say that. I've mentioned that a number of times, and yeah, like Austin and Millie specifically, like those two guys never took accountability, never said, we fucked up and but to your point, and I agree 100%, like you can tell somebody that you disagree till you're blue in the face. If you're not willing to say, if you don't change this, here's my fucking resignation, then you're an absolute fucking coward.
I'm not being a part of this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be a part of this.
Yeah. I mean, cause then you're just complicit and you're part of the problem, like your whole job is to advise and influence, and if you're the expert and that expertise is not being adhered to, then you should be willing to walk.
Absolutely. And then, the trickle down to the person that was running that evacuation on the ground, like what a chaotic thing for them to have to try and orchestrate and figure out. I'm sure that person was trying to deal with a million different things that were at some point. Now, some things in their control and some, I don't know who it was, but I can't even imagine the burden that put on the people on the ground to try and get all those things done.
Yeah. Such a tragedy. And then, it's been since then just, downhill from there, whether it's people that worked with us or, women and children that are now getting put back in the Stone Age culturally. The Taliban getting the amount of money that they're getting every week still from the United States government.
Yep. all of our equipment that we left behind, all of those things. Luckily, we were able to smuggle our Terp and his family through a very long process up through Pakistan, use some shady connections at a foreign embassy in Pakistan to get them a visa to stay there longer while we got them processed to come here. And now they're here. All three of those individuals, the two brothers and the cousin, are all living in Virginia now together. Wow. By the way, they started a business. They're doing very well for each other, the American dream. Yeah. But there are thousands of people that supported our clearance, that support our operations, that were not as fortunate in that. And, you look at, it's not about us, it's definitely about them, but you look at the situation that it left all of our service members in. So many people sat across from those individuals and told them, we got your back. Yeah. Like, you can support us. Yeah. You can support us because we're going to be here. We're going to take care of business. We're going to make sure that, Afghanistan is given back to you for control. And then we pull the rug out, and all of those individual soldiers, sailors, Marine, airmen that looked those people in the face and said, hey, we're here for you, and we're going to be here for you, just made giant liars out of all of them. Yeah. All of them. But, the silver lining to that whole cloud is just, it was very clear that the will of the American people was not with that decision. I mean, the outpouring of support and aid that went over there in that very chaotic situation to try and help in some ways was, I don't know how much good it did, but it was nice to see the country be like, we're actually not okay with this, with the way this decision is playing out, and the pouring out of support and aid to try and help people out that were over there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And I agree, I think, really with everything you said, even with the initial how we should have responded and then bailed. I absolutely agree. So it sounds like you were not able to get that Terp on the plane from there. You had to move him
so we didn't get him on the plane. So the bomb went off the next day. I don't know why, but he went back to the same gate. Luckily, him and his family were not injured. It's so hard. I mean, it sounds very callous to say that, because obviously we lost our service members and hundreds of other individuals, but they were there when the bomb went off. Wow. I saw it go off. Like, I was watching the news, and I didn't sleep for like 3 days because I was trying to everything I could to get them out of there. And I saw it go off. I'm texting him. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. He's not responding, and I'm starting to think, man, him and his family just got vaporized. Hits me up a couple hours later. He's like, hey, I was there. It's horrible. We got to a hotel. I was like, hey, man, we'll figure something else out. But in the back of my head, I'm like, we're done. Yeah. We're done. They're going to lock down justifiably, which they should have done earlier, that entire base, all Americans inside, and no one's going to get in or out anymore. So I'm trying to, keep him in a good state of mind. I'm looking for options, and I'm just I'm running out, man. I'm talking to guys in the agencies, and they're like, dude, unless he can hop over a wall and not get shot, like, he's not getting out with us, at least. We're done. So about 2 days later, when I'm kind of out of options at this point in time, my phone rings, and I answer the phone. It's a 903 number, which is Texas number.
That's right here.
Right here, which, I still have my 903 number. So I knew it was someone from my area, and it was my best friend's mom from growing up. And she hits me up, and she's like, hey, I saw, we started a GoFundMe account for Zabi is his name and his family, because I had a feeling that we were going to need a lot of cash to get them out and get them to the States now that we couldn't get them on a plane, basically. I knew, like, if we're going to smuggle them out, like, everything over there works by this. So my sister started a GoFundMe account and, emailed it out to a bunch of people, and she saw it. And she hit me up and she said, hey, I think I have someone who might be able to help. And I'm like, okay, awesome. In my mind, I'm like, if I can't figure it out, how is my childhood best friend's mom going to figure this out? But I'm like, okay, whatever, fine. So she puts me in contact with this guy from her church who had developed a network in Afghanistan and smuggled out some missionaries from Afghanistan about 3 years earlier. Wow. And he said, hey, my network is still active, and I'm confident we can get him out. But it's going to take a lot of cash. And I was like, well, we've got a GoFundMe account. We got 10 G's in there. And he said, it's going to be probably like $60,000 to get all 3 of them out. I was like, okay, well, start the process. Like, I'll find the cash. Even if we have to bankroll it ourselves, like we'll find the cash. So, he starts, working the backside things. And then he calls me a day later and he goes, hey, I'm getting things set up. It's paid for. You don't got to worry about it. I'm like, well, what do you mean it's paid for? And he said, I've got a friend from Dallas. I told him what's up. He said he'd cover everything.
Did you ever know who it is?
Yeah. I won't say his name because I didn't ask permission. Yeah. But not a serviceman, just a good dude from Texas.
Wow.
And he wrote a check for everything we needed to get them out and everything we needed to get, everything that organization needed to get another service member's terp out as well. So this guy probably came out of pocket about 125 to 150 G's of his own money to get them out.
That's amazing. It's bullshit that an American citizen would have to spend his own money to do that, and our government didn't do it.
Yeah,
while they're taking our money and sending it to every fucking buddy else.
Absolutely. But I mean, such a humbling thing to be a part of a country where people care enough about what's right to want to do something like that. So it still took, it was about a week. They were holed up in a hotel. They couldn't really go out because the Taliban controlled everything. And I was texting him and telling him what the plan was. And late one night, driver pulls up. They all get in. They start navigating, trying to go up to the border in Pakistan. And I sent him a list of checkpoints to help his, his driver's navigation that I had got from some contacts. And there's probably 125 checkpoints in Afghanistan. About 30 of them they would have to get through. So 4 days of driving and trying to get through all these checkpoints. Every checkpoint, they're getting asked questions. They're getting, their documents looked at, fake documents, all of those things. Because again, if they would have scanned their eyes with any of our biometrics, he would have popped like that because he was in all those systems. So I get a picture from him on the 5th day. It's a picture of him and his son at the border crossing in Pakistan on the other side. They made it to Pakistan. So prayers answered, miracle. They ended up having to stay in Pakistan for about a month and a half because the embassy in Pakistan, which, just fortuitously for me as a new guy, I had done a JSET to Karachi. And I had spent time in the not the embassy, I'm blanking out. What's when we don't have an embassy? Consulate. The consulate, I had spent time over there at the JSET, so I still had some contacts. So I reached out to them, told them the case, and they, helped move their paperwork up to the top, but they were still there for about 2 months. Wow. And then finally got their SIV approved, their special immigrant visa approved, and now they live about 2.5 hours from us in Virginia.
Do you keep in touch with them and talk to them?
Yeah, they came up to my place last year for a Thanksgiving.
What is their mindset mentality like now, being here and being away from there? Like, is there just like they're almost a different person? It's
a mixture. Like, they're definitely enjoying all the things that America has to offer them. And again, when you look at it from a perspective of the type of people that we want over here, they came over here, they all got jobs, and now they started a restaurant.
Yeah.
And they have their own business that they're all running together. But they have family that's still over there that didn't get out. So there's always going to be a little bit of that bittersweetness, the fact that they're here and their family's probably never going to come over here. Yeah. But they don't hold any of that. What's crazy to me is just the way of life over there is so different from ours. The reality of things that they just have to deal with on a day-to-day basis is kind of like no factor to them. Like they don't hold any grudges. They don't hold any grudges about how we pulled out of their country whatsoever.
Yeah.
They're still, excuse me, super proud of the support that they gave us, and they would do it again in a heartbeat if we asked them.
Yeah. And I imagine that they don't play the victim either.
No, they don't know the victim card. Yeah.
It's wild. All right. So you guys come back from that deployment. And then did you jump right back into another platoon for your officer in charge and went to Iraq? I did. I was very fortunate because most O's have to go away to a disassociated tour, which is basically go away to another 2-year tour somewhere. Maybe it's at a boat team. Maybe it's at a staff job. That seems like a mistake.
Yeah. there's a pipeline. There's a reasoning why they want people to get some extra experience in different ways, and I think there's a little bit of truth to that. But there's also the truth to all of these tactical skills are perishable. So the second that you go away from a SEAL team, that tactical skill set from a leadership perspective, from a ground force commander, which is what officers are supposed to be when they're operating, that starts to atrophy.
I agree. And I mean, to me, because that's the most dangerous and where you're going to need to be the sharpest, taking a couple year break, I think is a mistake. That extra leadership, I think, is good, but that would be better served after your officer in charge, before you're going to be at an even higher level,
a troop
of XO
commander,
yeah. I mean, to me, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So you guys come back from the Afghanistan deployment, and you jump right into your officer in charge, or OIC cruise, if you will, and you go to kind of at the height of the ISIS mess, Iraq-Syria combination. Can you kind of walk us through that whole?
So that was my troop commander tour.
Oh, okay.
Which was my next tour.
Okay.
The OIC tour was 2013. Well, really 12 up to 14.
Okay.
So at that point in time, Iraq had completely drawn down, which is what allowed ISIS to then start to make their moves and everything. So
I gotcha. Okay.
The things going on for us were Afghanistan, which is where everybody wanted to go. And then there was some things picking up, not really picking up, but you always had your troop going to the Pacific Theater to stage and do things. So where we ended up going was a place called the Crisis Response Element, which is at an undisclosed location in the Middle East. And basically the theory behind it was more or less like break glass if there's an emergency somewhere in the Middle East. So stood up as a response. Part of the response to what happened in Benghazi. They wanted a force of special operations troops, and it was a combination of SEALs, the ODA SIF teams, or CRIF teams, I think they call them now, and then some TF-160th lift. And the theory was put them here, and if there's an emergency, they're able to, with their own organic lift, get to wherever the emergency is and respond to it. So it sounds really cool. Nobody really wanted to go there because we all knew what it meant. We knew that it meant we were just going to sit there on this base for 6 months, and there was not going to be any emergency. Like, there was never an emergency after Benghazi. Platoons just rotated through there, or troops rotated through there, and you just sit there for 6 months and do a little bit of training. Maybe there's some joint exchanges that you could do with different countries like Jordan or Lebanon that were around there, but there was no real-world operation. So not really what we were hoping to do. But at the end of the day, it's whatever the nation needs. So I had an awesome platoon, just great, super fortunate to have just a rock star platoon chief and platoon LPO, amazing new guys, just great platoon. And, we went over there and, some training, keeping stuff in order. And there actually came an opportunity to do an operation or support an operation during our time there. And I got to help support it. So it ended up being a very unique experience for us during that time as well.
Is that one you can talk about or not?
Yeah. Probably a little bit. So we were supporting the Tier 1 unit.
Oh, okay.
They were doing an over-the-beach operation off the coast of one of the Eastern Africa countries. And we were integrated with them, and we were supposed to be the immediate response force. So there's some question between what's a quick response force and immediate response force. Quick response force typically means, doctrinally means they're owned by someone else and they'll respond if there's a need. Immediate response force, IRF, means they're your personnel and they're basically right there in case they're needed.
I gotcha.
So, we are the IRF force. The op was the craziest operation I've ever been on. Everything that could possibly go wrong started to go wrong. But to the credit of the guys that were taking care of the assault, just mind-blowing professionalism. Wow. Super calm, super cool, super collected, took care of business. Lots of, boats breaking down in the water, everything, just chaos and pandemonium. Very fortunate that no one was seriously injured or killed on that operation, but it was an amazing experience for me to be able to be a part of a mission like that, real world over the beach operation. And I mean, the deal, anytime you add Mother Nature into things, the complexity level just goes.
She's usually going to sweep the leg.
She will sweep the leg.
Yeah.
And, we had boats running into crab pots that we couldn't see.
Shit.
We had boats going down in the surf zone that we were worried about them getting flipped over. By the time the last assaulter left the building that they were assaulting, a response force of about 20 locals from that country, from that city, busted in the back door to try to augment the bad guys that were already in there. Just crazy and chaotic. But, man, those guys, they're pros.
Yeah.
They're pros.
It's like they are just ready for everything that happens. Yeah. There is no what if that they're not prepared for.
And the level of communication that was going on, everything sounded just like this. Just like this.
That's awesome.
It's
like
great.
a pilot.
They're very awesome to be a part of that. And then we had a couple of new guys with us. Just what an example for them too of very chaotic situation. And, hey, keep your calm, and things typically work out.
I would say experiences like that for new guys, or even just younger sled dogs in normal SEAL platoons, like there is no better recruiting tool for that command than that. What a fucking beautiful machine when it's running right.
Yeah.
So I guess hats off to those guys. Managed to do that. You come home from that deployment. Did you go right back into a task unit?
I asked my executive officer, I was like, hey, I want to go do my troop commander. And he's the man. And he just kind of laughed at me and said, bro, you're way too junior to do a troop commander tour. It's like, you got to go find someplace else to do. So I asked him if I could go over to Bud's to be a phase officer over there. And he hooked it up for me. And, I went over there not because I really just wanted to be a phase officer. I did think it would be a great experience, but I knew if there's a need for an officer to step in somewhere operationally, Bud's is a place they'll look for pretty quickly. So if someone gets injured, someone gets fired, and they need someone to be a platoon commander, I could raise my hand and say, hey, I'll do it. And because Bud's is very necessary, but because it's not an operational requirement, usually you have some space to maneuver from over there. So that was why I chose that tour.
Yeah. What phase were you in?
Third phase.
Oh, no
that
shit.
phase right there, which is the best phase.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted first phase at first, and my buddy, who was just a total stud, Mike, showed up a little bit before I did and took first phase, and I could not be more glad that Mike took first phase. Yeah. There's the whole spotlight is on first phase.
That and to me, like the logistical nightmare of, that's when there's the most students.
Yeah.
The most shit can go wrong.
Yep.
It's just like by the time you get to third phase, the students, 4 students are seasoned and kind of know the deal.
Yeah.
So.
And you can actually pour into them then from a mentorship perspective. Because in first phase, there's not a whole lot of mentorship that's going to happen just because
just hammering them.
85% of those guys aren't going to be there in a couple of weeks.
They'd be wasting your time.
Yeah. So by the time they get to third phase, most of 99% of those guys are going to graduate and join the SEAL team. So I had just the best crew I could possibly have for the instructors at third phase. And, we spend a lot of time on San Clemente Island and you can really start to teach them some things. And from a mentorship standpoint as an officer, I could sit down with the officers that were going through and start to work with them and mentor them. And I just don't think being a first phase officer, you don't even have the time to do that, even if you wanted to.
Yeah. Do you have a story that stands out or a memory that's special to you as the third phase officer that you could share?
Yeah, there's a kind of a funny one. So you have we call a class party. So the class spends almost all of the 7 weeks on this island called San Clemente Island, which is a Navy-owned island. A lot of it's used for aerial bombardment training. And then, we have our little base set up out there that we do our urban training. And then third phase, most of it happens out there. Cool little compound out in literally the middle of the Pacific Ocean, middle of nowhere. So
spearfishing.
Galore. Yeah. Kind of a little like a frogman's paradise out there. And at the end of that, you have a class party that takes place at our little compound. And it's really the first time, the wall is still there, but it's the first time that the students really get to hang out with the instructor cadre. And there's a little bit of the formality stripped away. Not all of it. The formality is definitely still there, but they're graduating. Yeah. They're going to go through SQT. Likelihood is you're going to see them in the SEAL team someday. So we're basically celebrating their achievement of graduating buds. Yeah. We have what we call an amnesty time during the old the party. So the instructor, usually it's your proctor, the guy that's kind of responsible for the class, says, hey guys, this is amnesty hour. Nothing's going to be held against you. We know you guys are sneaky. We know some stuff happened that we didn't see. We just want some cool stories. Like, there's no repercussions. Tell us whatever you want. What are some funny things that happen? So one of the classes, one of the students gets up and he's like, okay, so, there's no repercussions. We're like, no repercussions. So he goes, okay, well, one night, pretty late when you guys were, asleep and we had a couple of guys on our watch, me and another guy snuck into the compound. We grabbed keys to one of the side-by-sides, and then we went into our armory and we took out a couple of nods and we just toured around the island at nighttime with nods on. And bro, the look on all of the instructors' faces was just murder. And we had to be like, hey guys, we said amnesty. We said amnesty. So
that's nuts.
The balls on those guys.
No doubt.
There's 0% chance you would ever convince me to do something like that
zero.
When I was going through third phase. So hats off to them for doing it.
Like you get caught doing that, you're gone. Yeah, I mean, like that. Talk about risk not being worth the fucking reward.
Instantaneously gone.
Can you say who those guys were? Or are they still in?
I can't even remember. They're probably still in. I can't even remember it. It sounds weird to say that about a story like that I remember so vividly, but it's Groundhog Day after a little while, they all start to they all have shaved heads and they're in great shape. They all start to kind of, blend in with each other.
To me, it's actually reassuring to hear that because this wasn't that long ago.
No.
That the caliber of students are still that kind of guy. That's who you need.
That's what I was saying to some of the instructors was like, listen, man.
Because pissed as you are, like be glad that they were so good at not getting caught that you guys didn't even catch them.
And they had the balls to do it.
Yeah.
There's still a little bit of cowboy out there.
Yeah.
So
that's good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so you wrap that up, and then now you go to your task commander.
Wrap that up, and my grand scheme kind of worked out. There was a need for a troop commander at SEAL Team 5, and at that time, I had spent about a year and a half at the training command, so I was still junior, but I was time and rate enough to where they would let me do a job like that. So,
can you explain and contrast task unit commander versus OIC for the?
So an OIC is in charge of one platoon, which means roughly, the SEAL teams kind of shift the number of people that are in a platoon every periodically for some reason, but it's typically somewhere between 16 and 21 guys are going to be in a platoon. As a troop commander, now what it means is you're in charge of 3 platoons. So you're going to be in charge of about 60 personnel. So that's the big difference is you're just one layer of leadership up. So as a troop commander, you've got 3 platoons you're running, which means you've got 3 platoon commanders that are working for you that are in charge of those platoons, 3 platoon chiefs that are the tactical experts of that. And you've got a senior enlisted, an E8, who's your tactical expert right-hand man that's helping you make good decisions in that role as well. So the next level of leadership up, and you report directly to the commanding officer. So as a troop commander, as a platoon commander, there's still that command to command sync, but the troop commander really has the ear of the boss.
Yeah.
So just your next level in progression, basically.
And so once you slide into that, it's at that time kind of the height of ISIS in Iraq and Syria was pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
So you guys knew, hey, we're going into the lion's den, and
we knew there was a chance.
Okay.
We knew there was a chance. So I checked in as the first troop commander that went over there. Outstanding commanding officer. The Command Master Chief, Jason Gardner, who's now one of our leadership instructors at Echelon Front, he's actually probably the reason I'm a leadership instructor there is, he kind of pulled me in when he went over there. They were running the command, and, they told me I was going to be the Iraq troop. So we knew there was the potential. We knew ISIS was in there doing things, but to that point in time, everything that the United States military had been doing in Iraq and Syria to counter ISIS was just basically advise. Advise meaning you have Iraqi soldiers on the ground, just tell them what to do. There wasn't a lot of stuff going on for us. As we started to get closer to deployment, we started to realize, hey, the clearance of Mosul is probably going to happen, and it's probably going to happen on our watch. And we might be really fortunate to have this amazingly unique experience for our troop to go in there and take a part of this clearance. Now, what that meant was we had to be completely prepared for that operation to include a level of professionalism that sometimes other forces don't equate with the SEAL teams. So What I mean by that is there's definitely, with special forces in general, with SOF in general, there's the kind of the mindset with some people in the military that we're kind of cavalier, that we do our own thing, that we don't really play that well with others. And there's, that's an earned thing for to a certain extent. But that whole campaign was going to be oversaw by conventional forces. Now, even though we were going to have the lion's share of the effort, it was controlled by conventional forces. So not only did we have to be very good at our job, we had to be able to convince them that we were trustworthy and very good at our job as well. And that started with our commanding officer and our command master chief, who were just brilliant at creating those relationships with them that opened the doors for us.
Man, that's amazing. So you knew that was a strong possibility. Once you got in country, what was the kind of chronological timeline of how things went down?
Very quickly. We knew right before we landed that the Mosul clearance was going to happen and it was going to be done on our watch. Yeah. What we didn't know was who was going to be in charge of the Mosul clearance yet, because Iraq was broken up as all battlefields that Americans operate into these geographic territories. Well, the Marines, to include MARSOC, which is the Marine Special Operations, controlled the north of Iraq, which is where Mosul is. So the logical force of choice would have been just give it to the Marines because they're already up there. Our commanding officer and our command master chief were so good at building those relationships ahead of time and building trust and making the case that it should be us that runs that clearance based on overall capabilities, not meaning the guys on the ground capabilities, but our team came with more operational capabilities than the Marines did at that point in time. So they made the case to the commanding generals that were inside of Iraq that it should be us and not the Marines that run the Mosul clearance, and they gave us the green light. So we land, and we were clearing towards Mosul, but we weren't quite in Mosul yet. SEAL Team 1 was before us, and they had done a great job of starting to clear towards Mosul, and we were about 40 miles outside of Mosul. So we came in, I had 5 platoons. So typically a troop has 3 platoons. I had 3 platoons all the way through workup, and then the command gave me 2 extra platoons from SEAL Team 5 to take with me into Iraq because we needed that amount of bodies to cover down on Iraq. And I've just been hooked up my entire career. And they just gave me like 2 of the best platoons you could possibly imagine, with just squared away leaders and squared away shooters at every single level. So I went over there with 5 platoons, and we broke those 5 platoons up into 7 different outstations. And each one of those outstations had their kinetic responsibility against ISIS. Some of it was out west away from Mosul, and it was basically disrupt and disturb. And then almost all of the outstations were focused on pushing through Mosul and then clearing Mosul, with one platoon particularly being the main force that was going to push through Mosul, and the other ones clearing Mosul from different angles and keeping the pressure on ISIS. So for the first month and a half, it was clear up to Mosul, staged for a couple of weeks to prep for the clearance of Mosul, and then it was just every single day in Mosul, taking it back city block by city block, with our guys supporting the Iraq Special Operations Forces that were doing the actual clearance. Our guys were in advise, assist, and accompany, which meant literally supporting those operations with them and making sure they got the job done.
Was Sniper Overwatch a big part of that?
Big part of that.
Yeah.
Sniper Overwatch, a lot of standoff munitions, and this is why, again, phenomenal commanding officer and CMC that knew the air picture over there was going to be very restrictive, which meant that we were not going to be able to call strikes off like we could in Afghanistan. So we needed to be able to rely on our own firepower. Wow. So we spent a lot of time getting our guys trained up on different mortar systems that they could employ organically, different rocket systems that they could employ organically, and not have to wait for the air picture to get cleared up for us. Because at the time, when we started the Mosul clearance, in order to get clearance to let a munitions off into Mosul, we had to get permission from a 1-star general who was sitting in a fire center to approve that strike.
Oh, wow.
So we had no joke, a telephone in my ground force commander's up-armored vehicle so that he could communicate directly to that strike force commander in order to get that strike off.
The bat phone.
The bat phone. And that sounds, it's terrible, But it could have been a lot worse. It could have been this game of telephone, but because our commanding officer knew what was going on, he said, listen, you guys, I know you're not going to like to hear this. You need to put a phone in your VIC. I'll send my comms guy up. We'll wire the VIC up. But if you don't have the ability to talk right to that commanding general, your strikes are going to take half an hour to get off.
I mean, so, like, even, I mean, not that I'm an outsider, but I wasn't there. But to me, hearing that, it's like, it seems so silly in that, like, number one, is that 1 star, did he ever say no?
Yes.
And what was do you know what the reasoning behind saying no would be?
Whatever his picture of the battlefield was at that time.
I mean, does he have overhead FLIR? And
we made it as good as we could. We gave every resource that we had. We took our comms guys, and we had a very special comms OIC that worked at SEAL Team 5, who was the lead comms guy for a development group when he was younger in his career. So he knew all these different tricks of the trade. And we put a ton of equipment in that 1 star's strike facility so that he could real-time battle track everything that was going on in Mosul. Yeah. So we enabled him as much as we possibly could. But to think that he had the same picture as the guy on the ground is preposterous.
Yeah, it just doesn't. I mean,
it's preposterous.
It's such a backwards way to do things.
It is. I mean, and it changed. And what caused it to change was kind of 2 factors. So one, to paint a picture of how bad that was for the guys on the ground, the biggest threat for our forces, and I say our forces because I wasn't in Mosul, I was a troop commander. My job was to prepare my guys to be ready for Mosul, and then I was back more at a command and control function. Occasionally I'd get to go up and hang out with the guys and do some fun stuff, but I wasn't leading in Mosul. My platoons were leading in Mosul. My job and my troop chief's job was to train our guys up and get them ready for Mosul. So, my platoon commander that's in there, the biggest threat to their forces is suicide vehicles, because the Islamic State had controlled Mosul forever, and they had built hundreds of suicide vehicles, and they had them implanted all across the city. So as you're doing this clearance of this city block, a block up ahead of you, a suicide vehicle can pop out of an underground garage and barrel towards you, and you might have less than a minute to either get rockets on it or to get a strike off. That minute there's no way communicating up to a 1 star that minute is going to happen. So the Iraqi Special Operations Forces at the beginning of that clearance were just getting decimated. One, because of the tactics they were using. They weren't listening to our advisors. But 2, because it took so long to get effects on those suicide vehicles. So what changed it was kind of twofold. Overnight, the election happened while we were over there. When Trump took office, overnight permissions changed. So that was step 1. The reins got loosened for our guys. What also happened, and this goes to show the power of the guy on the ground, is the 2-star commanding general of all of the counter-ISIS campaign, so he's control of Iraq and Syria, came down to get boots on the ground in Mosul to see what was going on. And he talked to my platoon commander. And my platoon commander very eloquently and very tactfully explained the situation that was going on the strikes. And it blew that 2-star's mind that that's what was going on. Yeah. So between the ROEs opening up at the national level and then that 2-star coming out and going, what are you guys forced to do? Within 24 hours of him being on the ground, the platoon commander on the ground had strike release authority up to a certain level of munitions. Wow. And that's really what allowed us to really start gaining ground inside Mosul and to lessen the attrition to the ISOF guys, the Iraqi Special Operations guys, by like 90%.
Oh, damn. That's what a shift. And again, it just kind of highlights the stupidity sometimes of the way things work. But for all of the 5 platoons, the SEAL platoons that you were in command of, were any of them actually in kind of door kicking mode, or was it all, were there instances?
Yes and no. Not supposed to be, but things are so dynamic out there that at times you have to respond to different things. Yeah. There was a CNN reporter that went in there into Mosul reporting, and they got lost, and her and her position were literally at risk of being overrun. And our platoon commander on the ground was running strikes with the strike cell, keeping the ISIS guys at bay why they could get a force over there to move over there and grab them and get them out. So their main position was supporting fires, which is where it's a good place for them to be, because you know how effective our snipers are. You know how effective our guys are with standoff weapon systems. So you get elevated, you can see the terrain a lot more, you can have a lot more devastating capability. But every now and then, just because of how dynamic things are, guys have to go and make stuff happen.
Yeah. Were there any confirmed KIA Carl Gustav shots?
Oh my goodness, I'm sure, yes. I can't say how many right now, but I mean, during that entire 6-month deployment, our team, between the guys on the ground, all the different platoons, and then the strike cell that our team ran, was responsible for over 1,300 EKIA inside of Iraq.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Man. I guess so, kind of the same question with Afghanistan. I mean, obviously the way that we pulled out of Iraq and the manner in which that all took place to enable and allow ISIS to take over the way they did was, I would say, equally disheartening and heartbreaking as the Afghan pullout. But I'm curious, if you look back, having spent time there also, and you look at the Iraq campaign collectively, do you think, what are your thoughts on it in terms of justified or not? Very
similar. No. I mean, the whole reason that we went in there was predicated upon finding things that we never found. The whole process of the regime change and all of those things too, the mistakes that were made in there, it just left this quagmire that guys were left to deal with for the better part of, a decade and a half. Going in there and completely eliminating the Iraqi military threat within like 3 weeks. But then we took all of the leadership of that country, all of the Ba'athist party, and just removed them all from power. And it just left this giant vacuum. And then, what's going to fill that vacuum is nothing good. And then, Iraq was also it sounds weird to say this, a stabilizing force in the Middle East, because, the strong man's there and people aren't going to do certain things while he's there. So we just kind of created this Pandora's box. So a lot of strategic mistakes were made.
I agree. I mean, I think Saddam kept Iran in check a lot better than without him.
Yeah.
Do you think that Iraq, on the whole, was a mistake entirely?
I don't have all the information that leaders are paid to make decisions based off that information, but I think yes.
Yeah.
I think yes.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, go in there, remove Saddam if we had to for some reason, but completely dismantling the rest of the party just left a huge vacuum that allowed the insurgency to come in there and fill that up. But I think, for sure.
Yeah. I don't disagree. All right, so you wrapped that platoon up. It seemed like, or deployment up, I guess. Everything, like you guys swept through Mosul, took it back over.
Yep. So we finished the entire west side clearance. And then there's a river that bifurcates Mosul between the east and the west. The west is the high-rise buildings, very urbanized. And then the east is what they call Old Town Mosul, which is the old city, mud kalat structures, more typical, ancient Middle Eastern type structures. So we finished that clearance and then turned over with SEAL Team 7. The timing just worked perfectly where they landed in country with about a week of operations left, so they could get on the ground, get a feel for operations, build relationships. And then we finished the clearance and had about a week to turn everything over logistically. We left, and then they finished the eastern part of the clearance of Mosul.
Yeah, that's pretty slick.
Yeah.
When you came back from that, or even I guess as you were wrapping that up, did you know at that point that you wanted to get out?
No, I didn't. I mean, until I made the decision to get out, I never really thought about getting out. Like the SEAL teams are everything and more than I ever hoped they would be.
What was the thought process, if you can kind of walk us through getting home and then ultimately punching out?
So there was, but by the time that I got back from there in early 2017, there was still about a 2-year period before I made that decision. So I asked to do another troop commander tour because I was very junior. I was spot promoted to do that tour. So I was thinking, I got plenty of time to kill. I'll do another troop commander tour. And my very amazing commanding officer just kind of laughed at me and was like, no. Nice try. I appreciate it, but no. Yeah. But then he said, hey, you can stay here at 5 and be the operations officer if you want to. And I did not want to leave 5. It was the best team I've ever been a part of. And the next commanding officer that was coming in was just another complete stud. And the command master chief was going to be my first platoon chief, Dave Hansen.
Wow.
So I'm like, there's no way I want to leave this team. So I stayed and took the operations job, which I loved. I know a lot of people aren't thrilled about that job, but I had great bosses. And man, the command itself just was almost like a party every time you went there. Not in a bad way, but just everyone was just fired up to train and work and get after it. So it was a great environment to be in.
What is a typical day of an ops boss at a SEAL team?
Oh my goodness.
Is there one a typical?
No, it's kind of just all over the place. So the job of the operations officer is to complete the commanding officer's intent. So the commanding officer will say, this is a generic statement, but like, hey, this troop's going to Iraq, this troop is going to wherever, this troop's going to PACOM, and he's not dictating that, but he's delivering the message of where people are going. And then what that means is we have a very dedicated training structure that gets us good on the basics that we need, but then each of those platoons need gear for that specific theater, specific training for that theater, and it's the operations officer's job and the operations shop job to prepare the team for deployment. So all of the training, all the administrative stuff more or less falls on the executive officer, but anything operationally the team needs falls on our shoulders. So lots of different projects, but hey, it's not boring, that's for sure.
It sounds like that would actually be a better gig than the XO.
1,000%.
To me, the XO seems like the shittiest job.
If you would have asked Adam, who was by far the smartest dude I've ever met in the SEAL teams, and the best example I could ever have as an XO, because that was my next tour, was an XO equivalent. To have him as my model for an XO was like the best gift I could have been given. But if you would have asked him, would you want to change spots with me?
100%.
Well, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I can imagine. So you did that for 2 years?
I did that for a year. And then I screened so there's a selection process for executive officers. I screened when I was just about a year in that seat. And usually what happens when you get picked up for executive officers, you finish your tour, you go into a list of people that have already been approved, and then the community just kind of says, well, I need this guy here, I need that guy there. And usually there's like a year or two before you get put into the role of an executive officer. Well, I got plucked right from there and got chosen to go lead the training command, Training Detachment 1, which was a dream come true. So unfortunately for me, I didn't get to deploy with the guys from SEAL Team 5 because it just a team like no other. But the consolation prize for me, which was amazing, was I got to go run the training command. And as you know, aside from deploying, what does our community put the biggest emphasis on? Training.
Yeah.
Training.
How long were you there for?
I was there for 2.5 years. So it's usually a 1.5 year tour, but there was some shuffling that needed to happen. Somebody in an executive officer role got fired towards my about 1.5 year mark of being in TRADET. So the guy that was supposed to bump me out needed to go and fill that role. So the Commodore asked me if I wouldn't mind extending at TRADET. I'm like, I'll stay at TRADET for as long as you want me to stay at TRADET. So it was during that time that my wife and I made the decision to get out of the community. Yeah. And what really drove it for me was just, I said at kind of the beginning of this, I only ever really had 2 goals. One was to be a good SEAL, which I hope I accomplished. And then the other was to be a great father and a great husband. And when I looked at the ages that my kids were, and I looked at the remainder of my career, because I still had, at the time I made the decision, 8 years left. I had never moved. I had been operational in San Diego the whole time. That was over with now, because now my executive officer tour was over with. I did it very, very young, which meant I'm free cheese to the community. They can use me wherever they need to use me. So I knew we were going to move. I was going to deploy a lot in non-operational roles. There were no wars going on anymore.
You'd wind up in Bahrain or Diego Garcia as a logistics guy. Some things where you can still serve the community and do great things. But when I looked at what the future held for me versus the weight I was going to put on the family, we made the decision to walk away. And
to backpedal a little bit, what put me in that frame of mind was, and this is a lesson for all you leaders out there, that really good commanding officer, whose nickname was Beef, my SEAL Team 5 commanding officer when I was a troop commander, he sat me down when it was detailing time, and he said, hey, you're to the point now where your moves matter in your career if you want to be a commanding officer of a SEAL team. So let's map your career out. And he said, hey, give me your dream list of jobs. You've got 10 years left at the time. He said, each tour is 2 years. Let's build out the next 10 years and just say you got every single job that you wanted to get along the way. What would those jobs be? So I'm like, this is great. I write them down. And then he says, he's a father too. And he said, now I want you to write the age that your kids will be underneath all of those tours. And I started writing the ages out, and it starts to like hit me right in the gut. You know, I'm like, oh my goodness, man. And I looked at my last tour where if I did 20 years and I wanted to retire at 20, my oldest son was going to be 18 and leaving the house. Right when I have time to spend with them and really invest in all of my kids, my oldest son was going to leave that same year. Yeah. And then my next son was going to be gone the next year. And man, it really took me back.
That's such an important and valuable exercise,
yeah,
you know, for a leader to instill and put you through. That's really cool. Who was that?
His name's Beef.
Beef.
Yeah, Brian Dreschler. Just
that's
the
awesome.
Man.
Yeah.
The man. And as a troop commander, the amount of faith that he gave me was just unbelievable too. Yeah. Just awesome boss. Awesome boss. Awesome SEAL.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So once you made that decision, what was the kind of the next step?
Yeah, the next step was one, telling the Commodore, who was the guy that picked me to do that job. So I was terrified of that because I felt like I was, you know, not that I'm anything special, but, you know, you feel like you owe the community something. I had every tour that I ever wanted in the SEAL team. So I felt this weight of, a lot of people have advocated for me throughout my career to get to do the things that I want to do. And I felt like I was going to be disappointing some of them. So I was dreading that decision, but I told him, and he, you know, busted my chops like any good SEAL would do about being a quitter. And then he just goes, listen, man, you know, if that's your reasoning, like you're making the right choice. Yeah. So I make that move. And then, that was the first time I started to think like, well, what am I going to start to do on the outside? And Jason Gardner, who helped me run TradeEt, he was my command master chief at TradeEt for half of that tour, was now working at Echelon Front. And I've always been, another leadership lesson, always be an advocate for the people that you can be. He was always an advocate for me. That's how I ended up at Team 5 in the first place. When he was the CMC, he said, hey, Sean's good to go, bring him over. And then, you know, I knew Jocko in passing. We weren't buddies or anything like that, but like we knew who each other were, and Jason put in a good word for me, and Jocko sat down with me, and after like 10 minutes, he goes, the job's yours if you want it. So I was planning on doing that. And then one of my best friends in the SEAL teams at the same time was getting out and starting a construction technology-based company. And he asked me almost at the exact same time to come and help him start it up. And I talked with Jocko about it, and Jocko was like, listen, man, his exact words to me were, you would be stupid to not do that. Go do it. You know, you'll get some equity and hopefully a successful company, but more importantly, you'll learn just a ton. And then whenever you want, we're here for you. And you'll be more valuable to Echelon Front because now you'll have a blend of military experience, private sector experience, C-suite experience, startup experience. So, you know, there was no hard feelings at all. He was like, dude, you should 100% do that. Then whenever you're ready, we're here. Yeah. So I did that job for 2 years. I told my buddy Garrett, I said, hey, I can give you 2 years, and then I don't want to be in California. My family and I did not want to be in California anymore. So at the 2 year mark of that, a little earlier than 2 years, I hit Jocko up, and he's like, we're here. You're ready. Like, let's go. So the day that I stopped working for the construction tech company, I started working for Echelon Front, which is just
that's awesome.
The best team on the planet.
Yeah. Were they salty about that, the construction crew? I mean, I know you told them that.
No, not at all. Yeah. Man, again, you know, Garrett is just the best dude on the planet, one of my best friends. But I told them to begin with, unless you guys have a plan of getting out of California, I'm not staying there. Yeah. So I can give you 2 years to help. And it turned out that I left a little bit earlier, and the opposite of being disappointed, because it definitely left a gap in the company that they then had to rush to fill. Instead of that, like any good friend, any good teammate, he was just like, man, I'm so happy for you guys. Like, what can we do to support? So
what did that company do?
So they were a prefabricated home builder. They're offsite panelized builder. So they would take any wood frame structure, and they had a software system that would break it into a series of wall panels, floor panels, and roof panels. And they had a robotics line in a factory that would then frame all of those things out. So they could frame out a 2,600 square foot home in like 6 hours in a factory.
Wow.
And then you just ship those panels to the job site, and then you just pop the structure up on the job site. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Awesome stuff.
So you've worked for Echelon Front for how long?
Almost 3 years now.
3 years. And primarily, are you one of the lead instructors that when they're doing different events for companies or whatever, that you're one of the speakers? Or
yeah, so it's very much a leadership consulting / training company, and the services that we offer to companies vary based off what the company is asking for, but it's all focused on training and teaching people how to be more effective leaders.
Yeah.
So a typical day for us, and I think there's 13 of the consultants that go in and meet with companies now, and that's comprised of a blend of SEALs, Marine pilots, Marine door kickers. We've got some athletes on the team, some female athletes on the team, some females that were just dominating in their sector that we brought in on board. So we've got a pretty robust different experience level on the team now. But one of us or two of us will go and work with a company, and it might be a day with them, it might be 2 or 3 days with them, and what we would like is a longer term connection with them where we're helping guide and train their leaders to get them to the point where they can execute like leaders should execute.
Have you ever had any event go not horribly wrong, but like just a total kind of a shit show where like either the participants are giving you shit and like, I don't need this, or like?
Yeah, at the beginning, yes, there's definitely very, very rarely though, very rarely. Most people, when they find out that the company's investing in them to bring in some outside people to help offer a different perspective on leadership, most people are very grateful for that. Most people are not like, oh, this is ridiculous. I've been doing this for 100 years. I know what I'm doing. Most people are like, well, hey, this is great. The company's bringing someone else in to work with us and give us an outsider's perspective on things that will hopefully make me better. But yes, at first, sometimes there can be a little bit of a standoffishness about like, well, what is this all about? Especially because it can be perceived at times that we're just this military type organization that's going to come in and teach you how the military leads, which is not what we do at all. We teach you kind of like the opposite of, I think, of how a lot of the military leads. But
we're going to show you what not to do.
Yeah, pretty much like we're going to show you what a few communities in the military do very well, but the military in general does not do very well. There can be some of those barriers that we have to break down, but all of those barriers are just centered around ego.
Yeah.
But they pretty quickly will come down because it's hard to argue or hard to push back on the things that we talk about, which is relationships inside of your team matter a whole lot. The need to keep things very simple for your team matter a whole lot. How you communicate with your team matters a whole lot. We talked about detaching. We have to be able as leaders to detach from these stressful situations so that we can really see problems for what they are and not make emotional decisions. And then the biggest piece of it is the ownership piece, where as a leader, ultimately you're responsible for everything that happens on your team. Yeah. And even though we might not want to admit it at times, people know that's the truth.
Yeah.
So a little bit, there can be some resistance. Pretty quickly, those barriers tend to fall.
I mean, that's good to hear. I can only imagine that sometimes you get, this office worker that's like, I'm not fucking doing that. That it's like, no, I didn't sign up for this shit.
Yeah, we're like, well, what are these guys going to teach us? Like, I'm not in the military. I never want to be in the military. Yeah. So part of our job is just as quick as we can breaking down some of those misconceptions. Like, we're not going to come in here and teach you how to, command and control things from the top and centralized it. No, that's the opposite of what we teach. We teach push decision-making authority to the lowest possible level that you can, and watch how successful you become when you do that, when you trust the people on the ground that are doing the work.
Is extreme ownership kind of the guidebook or subsequent versions of that Jocko published, or is there an actual like kind of playbook that you guys go on?
There's definitely a kind of a curriculum that we teach and take people through, but it's all based off of the leadership principles that Jocko and Leif outlined in Extreme Ownership. So everything is basically stemming from that. And then, they both have wrote the Dichotomy of Leadership together, which is expounding on that. Jocko's wrote several other leadership books. When they first wrote Extreme Ownership, the title Extreme Ownership sounds pretty cool. Surprise, surprise. Sometimes people took things to the extreme. So then they wrote the follow-up book, The Dichotomy of Leadership, to add perspective, nuance, and balance to the things they talked about in Extreme Ownership. So that's basically the foundation. And really that's how we were brought up in the SEAL teams, was just through this culture of being leaders. And now being able to take that experience and offer it to people in the private sector that are facing very dynamic, very challenging situations has been great.
Surprised they didn't name it Less Than Extreme or Not So Extreme Ownership.
Yeah. I think if you asked them, would you still call it Extreme Ownership? They might not. They might not. Maybe they would, because it allowed them to write the follow-up book.
And so maybe this would rub them the wrong way. I don't know. Is there ever, from your, I guess, perspective, a little bit of the kind of Batman and Robin with Jocko and Leif? Like, to me, that would be a tough spot to be in as Leif, because Jocko's such a big personality, and is there? Do you ever see any of that, or is that out of bounds?
No, not out of bounds at all. Not at all. Jocko is the most decentralized person I've ever met, and if he trusts you, you ask him to do something, and he's just going to go do it. So he trusts Leif implicitly. And him and Leif obviously have this long history together, dating all the way back to 2004. And man, they just sing off of each other amazingly.
Yeah, that's cool. They don't live.
No, Leif's in Austin. Leif's a Texan, through and through. And Jocko's out there in Cali.
I can't believe he's still in San Diego. That's wild.
I mean, he's got the gym out there. He's got Victory out there. He's got a beautiful house right on the beach that he's had forever, and his community's there.
Do you train at all, jiu-jitsu? Are you into
boxing? I did a lot of Muay Thai in San Diego, and then I had to transition to boxing because there's no Muay Thai program anywhere near Front Royal, Virginia. So cool. I box with some guys in my community. We spar a couple days a week if I can make it. And then, like this morning, whenever I'm traveling, I dropped into a gym local here in Rockwall.
Really?
And Chops Boxing, and got some good work in. So
how was it?
It was great.
No shit.
Yeah, it was awesome. Great little gym down there.
Damn, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, what's it called?
Chapas.
Yeah,
CHAPAS. Yeah, about
check it out.
It's probably 13 minutes up the road from here.
Yeah, that's wild. That's cool.
Good program.
Yeah. I do have some Patreon questions from some of our tiered members about leadership and kind of some of the stuff that you're heavy into, and then I'd like to get into Primal Beef. Val asks, what's the most important thing a leader should do to keep a team energized and avoid burnout?
Yeah, listen to them is the most important thing that a leader should do. Typically, what I see when people feel very burnt out is they don't feel like they have a lot of say in what's going on. From the long hours that you put in during your time in the military, during your time in the SEAL teams, that if guys have a sense of ownership in that, if they have a sense that they can contribute and they can make decisions, no one complains about those long hours. Matter of fact, like, guys kind of dig it when they're working hard together, if they all get to make decisions and collaborate and work together. When people typically feel burnt out, it's when they don't feel like they have a lot of say in how things are going. And you would be surprised at how little work you actually have to ask of people to make them burn out if you're just telling them to be automatrons and not think for themselves. So the biggest thing that you can do when times get tough, the grind starts to happen, is just give them the ability to make decisions.
Yeah, I love it. Also, what are the key characteristics or behaviors required for someone to successfully lead a corporate or product turnaround?
Yeah, there are a lot of ones that we could talk about, but humility is the defining one. You are going to make mistakes as a leader. You just are. It does not matter how long you've been doing it. It does not matter how seasoned you are. It does not matter how much of an expert you are in that field. You are going to make mistakes. And that's okay as long as they're not catastrophic and as long as you can learn from those mistakes.
And own them.
Yeah. And what happens with people that don't have humility from a leadership perspective is because they can't own those mistakes and admit to those mistakes, they don't correct them. So what tends to happen is they keep making those same mistakes or similar mistakes over and over and over again because it's a blind spot for them. And what does the team then have to deal with? They have to deal with all of those mistakes. It also tends to shift the focus away from the team and away from the mission when I have a big ego, because things become about me. Well, why are we doing it this way? Well, because I said we need to do it this way. Not because it's the best way necessarily, not because it means that the most people are now bought in on the process and will work hard and creatively problem solve to get things done, but we're doing it that way because it's my idea. Yeah. And then you typically will also convince yourself that you're the smartest person in the room. And when we think we're the smartest person in the room, what do we not do? We don't listen to people. We don't ask their advice. We don't ask their opinions. We dictate to them how things should be done, and we make decisions in a bubble that are probably not going to end up being the best decision. So the best thing that a leader at that level can be is just humble. Yeah, humble.
That's great stuff. When consulting with companies, what strategies do you use when assessing organizational readiness?
Yeah, the biggest thing that we would tend to look at, and that is, are people aligned on what the overall objective is? And what do you think the answer is?
Usually no, if you're not ready.
Yeah, usually
no, period.
Usually no. And it's a trickle-down effect. So if I ask the people at the C-suite level, the executive level, do your people know what you're trying to accomplish? Do they understand the mission? They all say, well, yeah, heck yeah. And then you go and you talk with upper management. Well, yeah, of course. Then you talk to frontline supervisors, maybe. And then you talk to the front line and they're like, bro, I have no idea. I just do what I'm told. So building that alignment and understanding around the why meaning like, what are you trying to accomplish, is typically the most important thing that company needs to focus on, because people are going to make decisions and people are going to try and get things done. But if there's not alignment up and down the chain of command, those decisions a lot of times are going to end up being counterproductive to the overall strategy.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And you see that a lot. I guess I'm curious, do you guys get so far in the weeds with kind of that middle management or kind of first line supervisors? Like, what are your recommendations on how to communicate to the sled dogs what the big mish is? Because I can only imagine is that if you're one of the lower guys on the totem pole, you probably don't even give a fuck, because you're going to think, well, whether we make it or not, like, yeah, I have a job, but what's really in it for me? Like, I don't own % in the company. I'm not going to get the bonus. Like, what do I give a shit?
Yeah, you might see that if the company's not doing the right things. Now, I could give you a list of companies that we work with where the front line are just super bought in, even though they don't have equity, even though they don't have any type of like capitalized incentive, but they're bought in because they're given some autonomy. You know, they have a say in how things go. Their leadership looks out for them. There's good relationships, but you'll definitely, the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest leadership challenge in any organization is that frontline kind of middle of the road level management, middle of the road level leadership. And the reason is you're responsible for communication up the chain of command and down the chain of command. And those are two very different things, but you leverage the same things to make sure that you're good at that. So if I am a frontline supervisor, what do I know better than anybody at the top? I know what's actually happening on the ground. I know the problems people are facing. I know the opportunities that are out there, both that we could grab and opportunities for our own improvement. And I have to be able to translate all of that information up the chain of command so that leaders at the top level are making decisions based off of the real life information of what's going on. Then I have to be able to also take information that's coming from up the chain of command, and I have to be able to package that into a way where that it actually matters to the people on the ground and in a way that facilitates their understanding of what we are trying to accomplish and gives them the ability to make some decisions themselves. And that's a tricky place to be in. That's a fine line for them to walk, to be able to translate that information up and down the chain of command.
Yeah. So I guess going down the chain of command, do you have a kind of a Reader's Digest version of advice for those managers to be able to communicate? Here's where we're trying to go.
As simple as you can possibly make it.
Yeah.
Now, what happens a lot of times is there's these big overarching strategic visions that come down from higher up, and kind of similar to our rules of engagement. That strategic vision could be pages and pages in depth. And sometimes leaders are like, here's the vision. This is going to take us to victory. It's going to get us to that next level that we're trying to get to as a company. I want everybody to understand it. And sometimes what happens is leaders just pass it down the chain of command, and all of a sudden someone on the front ground is given this massive strategic vision that they don't even understand what the hell half of it means. They don't even speak the same language, potentially, not literally language, but business language, lingo that could be inside of there. It doesn't mean anything to them. So it's the job of that frontline supervisor to be able to take that information, ask the questions that they need to ask up the chain of command so they understand it, and then package it in as simple, clear, and concise of a way as they possibly can to the people at the ground level, and equating it to our ROEs. As an officer, I had to sift through 3 different levels of ROEs during my 3 tours. And what happens is they get set at a national level, and then lawyers add a lot of language to it. And then it goes to the commanding officer that's inside of that country. They add to it, and then lawyers add a lot of language to it. And then it trickles down all the way to the people on the ground, and you've got this document that's like 30 pages of do's and don'ts. Well, I can't, as the platoon commander, just hand that to my guys. They're never going to read it. They're exactly right. They're never going to read it. So it's our job as the leaders of that platoon to go through that thing with a fine-tooth comb, highlight the things that are important, highlight things that are confusing to me so that I can ask the right questions. And then once I have a good sense of what these ROEs really mean, now I can translate that to my guys on the ground. And every single time we had to do that, I was always able to translate it to like 1 or 2 sentences. And they typically sounded something like, if you feel in danger or you think your teammate is in danger, you're cleared hot. That's all they need to know.
Yeah.
They don't need to know the 35 pages of detail in there. So it's the frontline supervisor's job to be able to boil all of that down into the most simple, clear, and concise message they can possibly deliver.
It's basically a mission statement, cliff notes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Claire asks the best advice for middle management leaders in Fortune 500 companies who find themselves up against debilitating, politically correct senior leader dictates, which are currently baked into its systematic HR policies and hiring practices, best talent versus check-the-box talent, of which the latter is expected and sometimes mandated.
Yeah.
It's kind of a long question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And she's not going to like the answer. Yeah, she's not going to like the answer. I'm very sorry, Claire. But you have no ability in a Fortune 500 company to dictate that change in policy. And you violently pushing against that policy is going to do nothing but get you labeled as a troublemaker. And any positive effects that you might be able to have are going to get overcome because now you're going to have a spotlight on you. If that's really a priority for the company, and I'm not validating that, I'm just saying if that is a priority for the company, the best thing that you can do in that situation is understand why that's such a priority, and then try to have as good of a relationship as you possibly can with your immediate level of leadership, who are the ones that are enforcing that policy as well. Because if I have a really good relationship with them, I have some trust with them, and I have some influence with them. And if I understand why that policy is so important to them, now I can start to build a case, if I need to, against why maybe that's not the best approach. And what you might find, and you have to be open to this too, is, I'm not saying this is going to be the case, but you might find that the reality is it's actually not that damaging once you really peel things back. But if it is damaging, now you can really start to build a message around what you're seeing. So what do we know leaders in companies care about? They care about the bottom line. They care about productivity. They care about the quarterly things that are going on as far as how successful they're being. So if I have a good relationship with my boss, I'm not pushing back against every single thing they say to do around these different hires, and I understand why that policy is in place, if I'm seeing things that are affecting our bottom line and I have a good relationship, I can bring those up in a positive manner, in the sense of, I just wanted y'all to be able to see that this is kind of what I'm seeing at our level. Are there some things that we might potentially be able to do as a company to be able to address some of these different issues? Because I know how important this is to our company. So part of it is just embracing the understanding that our initial reaction to some of those things is going to be very counterproductive.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. And, to me, I guess I would ask, would you also ever kind of get to a point or add to that same piece of advice? Like, if it's such a big deal to you, then exit the company and go somewhere where that's not a priority.
Yeah. I mean, that's a decision that person is going to have to make. If it's really that big of a deal to you and you're not aligned with that, you're not doing that company any good, and you're not doing yourself any good as well.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of things that could happen before that decision is made to help improve that.
Yeah.
At least at her level.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's great advice. Garrett wants to know, if you had to listen to one song to get shit done, whether that's kicking ass or taking names, what would it be?
Oh my goodness, dude.
What's your go-to war song? What's your walkout song?
So my go-to war song is Megadeth. And because I'm on the spot right now, my brain is not working. Goodness.
Symphony of Destruction?
No, man, that one's too soft. It's God, it's like one of my favorite songs of playing guitar too. Yeah. Garrett, I'm sorry, man. I'm failing epically because my brain's not working right now.
He can probably pick it up.
It's the fastest paced Megadeth song of all time. And I have no idea how Dave Mustaine plays at that speed and sings at the exact same time. The irony is it's a very anti-war song.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you're of the opinion that Mustaine trumps Kirk Hammett then.
Yes, as far as just a guitar playing ability. Yeah. As far as just a raw talent ability, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. His playing is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, Hammett's unbelievable too.
Yeah.
But man, Dave Mustaine, holy cow.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. So I guess in kind of sort of wrapping up the Echelon Front and, what you do for a living now primarily before we get into the beef company, can you break down like one or two kind of key leadership components from a combination of being in the military for 13 years and now working for, one of the most premier leadership companies?
Yeah. The biggest thing outside of making sure that you're taking ownership of all of the things that are in your purview, your sphere, the biggest thing is relationships. And it's not something that typically people tend to put a lot of strategic focus on. If they happen in the course of life or they happen in the course of business, they happen. But I think way too few leaders actually focus on building those relationships. And relationships equal mission success.
Where do you draw the line between building a relationship and kind of fraternization of?
Yeah.
Because to me, one thing, especially the more employees you have or kind of the more people you're around that you may benefit or even the organization may benefit from building a relationship is how personal do you get versus not? And, because things go wrong, maybe you overshare and then they use it against you. Like how do you navigate that?
There's no one word answer I can give or one sentence because it's so nuanced individual to individual. But the tricky part of this is the answer comes back to the relationship. Because I know Mike, let's say in this scenario, because I know Mike so well, I know the line that I need to walk with Mike. Because I know how he operates. I know his maturity level. I know he's been doing this forever. So, he understands that even though we're very personable, Mike's a pro. He's like, there's that line of leadership there that he's not going to cross.
We're not talking about this, Mike. Yeah. Pro and maturity level, non-existent.
But then, I talk to someone else and I know because I have a good relationship with him that person is vastly, vastly less mature than Mike is. And I know that I have to keep a little bit more distance and a little more formality there. Yeah. So the answer to that question is, well, how do I know how close I need to be with this person or how close I can be with this person is you have to understand that person because it's different with everybody.
So the person is essentially going to dictate.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes good
Yep.
sense.
Yep.
Has there been a biggest challenge for working with corporate America coming from a military background?
Honestly, no. The teams that we get to work with, they're asking us to come work for them. So there's already an understanding, at least in some sense, of the value, hopefully, that we can offer them. Now, every now and then with employees, luckily I've never really had this. I had this happen to me one time with a company where I was kind of walking through some different principles, and this individual showed up late. And I was talking about some experiences in Iraq. And the way that I was talking about them was the civilians in Iraq wanted nothing to do with the insurgents, nothing to do with them. But what are they going to do? The insurgents controlled vast quantities of that country when we were there. And if an insurgent comes to your door and says, you're going to do this, and you don't, you know what's going to happen. They're going to kill you. They're going to torture your family in horrible, horrible ways. So what are those poor civilians left in the position to do? They have to do what they are asked. They don't want to do that. So I was walking through that scenario and then talking through what really allowed the shift for things was when the population realized that they didn't have to do that anymore. They did not have to listen to them anymore because we were creating this buffer for them. And that's when things changed. Because this person walked in late, all they heard was me talking about people in Iraq, and he equated me talking about they're bad people, basically. The guy was from Iraq, young dude from Iraq. He was actually wearing a Megadeth shirt. So I was like, oh, this guy's awesome. So he pulls me aside afterwards, and we had an awesome conversation. He goes, hey man, just so you know, like a lot of innocent people of my country were killed in Iraq. And, we didn't want this to happen to us. I had family members that were killed in Iraq, and to hear you talk about, the civilians in Iraq like that. And I realized what happened pretty quick. I was like, oh, I saw him walk in late, and now I started to put together, he didn't actually hear what I was talking about. He stumbled into the conversation and equated me of saying the civilians and the insurgents were the same thing, basically. So I just listened to him, and I just said, you're right, man. Like you're absolutely right. And listen, I did not mean any offense by that whatsoever. And believe me, I know, not as well as you do, but I know the reality of the ground on there for the civilians that were there, and it's heartbreaking. And I think, if I may, what you missed is, before you walked in, what I was saying was the civilians did not want that. They were in a really bad spot. But you're right, man. I need to be very careful about how I walk this line when I talk about this experience. And he was like, awesome, man. And we had another 10-minute conversation. Yeah. But there's always the possibility that some people who did not support a lot of things that happen might give you some pushback. And it's happened to a couple of people on the team. And when that happens, all you can do is just go, I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah. That's got to be a tough spot to be in sometimes. I'm also curious. One thing that I've run into just, post-military career, whether it's professional person, whatever, is the, sometimes you come across people where if they feel like they're being misunderstood, that almost like in a panic-stricken manner, like they get flustered to the point where they have to make you understand what they actually meant, instead of kind of how you took it.
Yeah.
Do you have a method for dealing with that?
Yeah. Very specifically, I call it reflect and diminish. And it's something that we will actually talk to and teach some of these leaders about if it comes up on topic when we're there with a company. And if you have something you're very passionate about, or something you feel like has gone wrong, and you come to me with it, if I say, hey, calm down. Hey, it's not that big of a deal. What's your reaction?
Dial it back a notch.
Yeah. Why don't you just take a step back? I think you misinterpret it. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, it's going to be dig your heels in.
That's exactly right. So I might not have to agree with that point of view, but I don't want to just completely throw it out. I want to at least listen and validate that person is feeling that way. Now, I'm not validating the truth of it. I'm just saying something along the lines of, Mike, I can see why that would be very frustrating. Or, Mike, that sounds really tough. I'm sorry that happened. But then as quick as I reflect some of that emotion, the diminished part is let's talk about solving the problem and not dwell on the problem itself. So if I don't understand your perspective, I can't really communicate effectively with you my point of view either, or I might not even need to communicate my point of view with you. If I don't understand your perspective, I'm going to sit here in my assumptions and I'm going to dig my heels in and you're going to dig your heels in, and it's just going to be this back and forth. But if I understand what you think happened and why you care so much about it, now because I understand that perspective, I can start to address some of those things. Yeah. So I'm not downplaying it. I'm, kind of reflecting some of that emotion around it. But then as quickly as I can, I want to start talking about how we get past that.
Yeah, that's great advice. Have you ever used the tactic of when two people disagree about something that you have them flip arguments, and now you have to argue the other person's side?
I haven't, but that's kind of genius.
Yeah. It's a really cool exercise for sure.
Yeah.
You may try that, but
I'm going to try that with my kids just to be entertained.
Yeah, it is. It's wild. I mean, and I think it's super valuable in that same vein. But so a couple of kind of out of left field questions. Kevin wants to know, if Jesus was alive today, what would he be doing? Riding a Harley, becoming a monk, locked up in a psych ward, or would he be considered the devil by average folk?
Man, I think he would be shaking his head at a lot of things that we've done counter to what he tells us to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's be my biggest thing.
Yeah.
I think he would say some things we've got right, and some things we've completely let our standards down on.
Yeah. Transitioning into the Primal Beef, I'll segue into it with this question from Kay. What's the last meal you cooked, and who was it for?
The last meal that I cooked was a tri-tip, a Primal Beef tri-tip, which is one of the best cuts you can get off of a cow. And I cooked it for my family, and it was a 3-pound tri-tip, and there was not one scrap of the beef or the juice left from that tri-tip.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So what inspired Primal Beef and getting involved, and how did that go?
Really, it was the move to this community that we live in Virginia that's very rurally based, very communal, and it was a realization of just how broken our food system actually is. Because there was a time in our country not that long ago where people had the ability to really connect with the source of their food, whether that was, produce, whether that was meat, whether that was eggs, whether that was milk. Even growing up, how old am I now? So that'd be like, I'm 41, 30 something years ago in Texas, there's a dairy farmer up the road. And if we wanted milk, we could go to the dairy farmer.
Was it raw milk?
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
I think that's a huge distinction too, is even the reasoning behind pasteurization is basically bullshit.
Yeah.
But most people still think, well, no, you'll get sick if you drink raw milk. And it's like, you won't, I mean, it's wild.
You'll find a lot of things that our system says are good and bad for you are kind of the opposite as far as our institutionalized food system. But there was a time where if you wanted beef, you went to your neighbor that had some cows and you talked to them and you got some beef. Yeah. And it's very, very, very rare that happens anymore in the United States. But the reality is it shouldn't be like that, because we have this tool called the internet, which allows people to connect at ways that we were never able to do. It really breaks down that tyranny of distance. And there's still thousands of farmers that are producing just amazing beef, that are pouring their heart and souls into beef. And I met one of those farmers in our hometown, and I bought a cow from him. I have my own cattle, but I like to say they're ornamental on the property. Yeah. We run a cow-calf operation, so the cows have their calves, and then when they get to a certain age, we take them to the livestock market, and we just sell the calves each year. So I don't eat our cows; they're just it's just fun having them on the property, and we make a little bit of pays for some of the feed and stuff, or some of the repairs for the farm and stuff by having the cow-calf operation. So I met a farmer, Paul, and I bought a beef from him. And my wife and I, with the kids, sat down, and the first steak that I prepared, I had a ribeye. My wife likes strip, and then the kids like ribeye, but they don't get it that often. They get they get sirloin. Yeah. So I cooked a bunch of steak, and I took a bite of the ribeye, and I looked at my wife and I said, "This is the best steak I've ever had in my entire life." And with 5 kids, we ate that whole cow pretty quick, ordered another cow, and it was the exact same. So like, there's something special about what is going on at this farm, and there's no reason that more people shouldn't be able to leverage that, because we have the ability to connect people through the internet and allow them to get to build that relationship with the farmer. So I called Jocko up and I just said, "Hey man, this is what I want to do. Do you want to be a part of it?" And he said, just like he usually does, very shortly and succinctly, "I'm in." And the genesis of it was really to restore the connection between the American public and their beef.
And so with that, I mean, how did you go about starting it? I mean, did you just say, "Hey, I want to invest and start a company," or how did that go?
Relationships. Build a relationship out. I'd known Paul for a while. My brother-in-law, Declan, is the other guy that's involved with Primal Beef. So it's him, Paul, Jocko, and myself. And we basically just started to build out this replicable system where we could bring that beef to the doorsteps of any American. Well, I say any, sorry, Hawaii, sorry, Alaska. We're trying to figure y'all out, but it's a little too far right now for us. But we built out an e-commerce site, primalbeef.com. And then we built a relationship out with a local processing plant that's in Lynchburg, Virginia, called Seven Hills. And the reason we wanted to go with them is they're never going to be the biggest, and they don't want to be the biggest. They want to be the best. Yeah. So after getting to know them, they put their reputation on being the best at butchering. So everything they do is based on that theory. So like, they're not trying to push through mass quantities of beef, which you lose a lot of the quality and consistency of the finished cuts. They just want to offer the best quality they possibly can. So everything, all of our beef is dry aged whole carcass through them. And that makes a huge difference in the finished product. And most processing plants, most big companies don't do that. And the reason they don't do that is they don't have the space for it. And you know how big a cow is.
Yeah. How is it, like a 28 day or what?
It's somewhere between 14 and 21. Yeah. So anything under 10, you're not really getting much of a result. Anything between 14 and 25 is about the same. 28 is when you start to get into like the extreme dry age. And it's kind of a turnoff for a lot of people because you start to get almost that
gamey funk
to it.
Yeah.
Some people dig it, some people don't.
Yeah.
I personally don't like it. I think the sweet spot is somewhere between 14 and 21 days.
Yeah.
So if you're a processing plant and you want to do that, well, those carcasses have to hang for 21 days. If you're butchering or you're processing, which some of these big plants do, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 cows per day, what's 3,000 times 21? That's 63,000 carcasses that you'd have to have hanging. There's no way. Yeah. There's no way. So they don't do it. So that's a huge advantage for us in the quality and consistency of the beef, is the fact that every single cut of our meat, to include the cuts that go to make your ground beef, everything, the cuts that go to make our beef jerky, everything is dry age, which increases the boldness of the beef flavor and increases the tenderness.
Yeah.
So then we built out the website. So people just go to the website, they pick the box that they want, they choose their steaks, and then we ship it the same day. So if you order by noon Central Standard Time, it ships out the same day, and it's going to arrive on your doorstep, depending upon where you are in the country, within 24 to 72 hours.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there a specific breed that you only work with?
Black Angus.
Black Angus.
Yeah, Black Angus.
And start to finish feed-wise, what does that look like?
Yep. So they're grass-fed, vast majority of their lives, and then the last, it's about 4 months, we transition them. They're still eating grass, but then we supplement with a blend of fruits and vegetables that we get from local markets.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so markets can only keep stuff on the shelf for a certain time. So the farmer that we partnered with works with them, gets all of that produce, and then we basically mix it up into a big mash, and then the cows are finished on that. And man, it does something special.
Yeah, it's rare that there's not at least corn or soy or some sort of grain somewhere in the process.
Yeah. There's what's called silage, which is the byproduct of corn, not the stalks, the stalks, the husk. Yeah. And the reason we have to use that is it binds everything together. Once you grind all that stuff up, it just becomes liquid because most of of fruit is just water and sucrose, and same with veggies. So we put the silage in there to basically bind all that stuff together so they can actually eat it.
Yeah. Have you guys ever tried any like squirrely projects like orange fed, walnut fed, carrot fed? Like I've had, there was a steakhouse in Vegas that had carrot fed steaks that were pretty good. There's another company. It's a small company. It's up actually in the Boston area. It's called Alpine Butcher, which I've ordered.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
They've got really high end Wagyu. They've got some Australian hybrid stuff, and I've not tried it, but I'm tempted. It's a bit pricey, but I think it'd be worth trying for Thanksgiving or Christmas or something. But it's orange fed. Yeah. Australian Wagyu hybrid stuff, and
I bet it's good. And the reason I'll tell you why I bet it's good is the fruit does something special.
Yeah. Are you a Wagyu fan, like an A5 Japanese sort of? No, too rich?
Way too much.
Yeah.
Way too rich.
I like a little bit of it. Yeah. But I do find that like the Australian hybrid is kind of that happy medium of not, 75% marbling but like to me at this point, I've been a little ruined even with USDA Prime. Yeah. And then it's a little lean. I do like those hybrid mixes.
Yeah, and Prime is the way that they grade beef too is it's eyeball. Yeah. So the grader is just looking at it and saying, I think this is this, I think that is that. Yeah. So the level of marbling is only one piece of the beef, because I can get a really marbled cow that's been eating just corn, and the marbling on there, the fat on there is going to taste vastly different than one that's finished on fruit. Or that one that's finished on soy. Yeah. So the marbling's one piece of it, and then what is the marbling made out of? What have they been eating is another huge piece of it. Yeah. The flavor profile of it. Yeah,
that's fascinating. I love to hear it. How can people find both Echelon Front and the Primal Beef stuff? Yeah,
Echelon Front, just go to echelonfront.com, and it basically lays everything out. Obviously, Jocko's a huge driver of that. So Jocko podcast, basically he's talking about all of those same things. And then for Primal Beef, the website's primalbeef.com. And then the Instagram page is just at Primal Beef Co. So that's the two main ways.
Yeah, sweet. Last question. John asks if you could have dinner with someone from the past and someone from the present, who would they be and why?
George Washington from the past. And I'd hopefully it would be a 32-course meal, because I'd have a lot of questions I would want to ask him. But I would want to know that the biggest thing I'd want to know from him is, how did he become so bold in his morals? Yeah. Because when you look at when he was the general of the Revolutionary Army, everybody in the Continental Congress was saying, you have to go and fight the British. We have to get a win, because the pot of money is drying up. And how we can increase that pot is by showing the public that we're winning. We have to have something that we can hang our hat on. And he was so convinced in his strategy that he pushed back against that. And he said, no, because that's a losing strategy. I know I can't beat them every single time on a battlefield. So I have to have this strategy of wearing them down, of evading, of decreasing their morale, of being evasive, and then strategically choose. So he stuck to his guns. He knew his vision. And despite all of that pressure that he was feeling, he said no. And the other thing is, very clearly, he must have just commanded respect from those individuals, where they didn't just say, well, we're finding someone else. Yeah. Even with that pushback, there was such a respect level for him that they let him run with it. And then they wanted him to stay in the White House. And he said, that's not what the country needs. We fought against that. And he had the gumption and the moral fortitude to step away from that thing that he helped create, and say, this needs to be the model for us going forward. And that's the opposite of what a lot of people nowadays seek to do, is just retain that power as much as they possibly can. Yeah. Yeah. And then sit down. What was the last piece of that was?
Who present would you sit down and have dinner with?
My wife, every time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's going to get you some points going back home. Good, great answer. Not even a good answer. Your answer on George Washington makes me think of the movie Patriot with Mel Gibson, and actually how historically accurate, I'm sure there's some fluff and Hollywood stuff, but the general overarching theme of that strategic and tactical philosophy towards fighting them, I think, is reflected well in that movie.
Yeah.
But man, I feel like I could talk to you all day. I've really, really enjoyed our conversation, and
Likewise.
so many good life lessons to pull from your experience and what you currently do. What haven't I asked you that I should have?
I can't think of anything, man.
I nailed it. You give me a 10 out of 10?
10 out of 10.
All
And
right.
I'm still just ruminating on the fact that I let Garrett and every Megadeth fan down because I cannot remember the name of that song right now.
Well, if I say when we wrap up here, pull it up on the phone, and then we'll throw it in the Patreon post show
Hell yeah.
stuff. So
Hell
Garrett,
yeah.
you will get your answer.
I'm sorry, Garrett. And to everyone that's ever listened to Megadeth, I apologize.
Awesome. Got some parting gifts for you here.
Oh, hell yeah.
Sure appreciate you coming on the show. If you want to open them now, and big
bro,
thanks
you kidding
to
me?
John Johnston and Champion Choice Silver
That's
for the
legit.
shit kicker buckle, which will fit in with where you're at, out
Hell
on the
yeah, it
farm.
will.
And if should you manage to rock that on the farm, I'd love to see a picture with us tagged in it. That'd be fun to share. But
I will throw this on the second I get back.
awesome. To the viewer, to the listener, to the supporter, I can't thank you guys enough for your unwavering and continued support. I'm always humbled to so many years after I started this show to still be able to sit here and run my mouth and be able to have the honor of having guests like this to be able to share their story and experience with. It's an absolute treat for me, and I am not naive to the fact that there are a lot of other choices that you could be spending your time on. So we appreciate your support. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you didn't, you can choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.